are live. Look at that, everybody. We're live with today's pre-show for today's 220. No, it's an SY0-701. Today's Security Plus. We're going to have a good time with Security Plus. I've already got all of the questions for this first hour ready to go. I'm just checking my cameras now, making sure everything is working. We will get started at the top of the hour with our Security Plus study group. Folks will start joining in the chat room, and we'll be ready to go here. Looks like data rates are good. Caching is good. I'm looking at my stats here, making sure everything looks okay there. It certainly does. And now we get to now we really get to see what you know about Security Plus. This is our last live stream of the month, and then we've got more obviously already scheduled for next month. We'll learn more about that as we go. Hello, chat room. Elijah says, passed my exam this past Sunday. Congratulations on your new Security Plus. That's exciting. Hey, Malk, thanks for joining us again. Got in here in the pre-show. How about that? Feels good to be in the pre-show. Get things going. Everybody's checking in. We got folks here from Kentucky. We've got folks checking in from, we got a lot of things going on, by the way, here. We got folks who are joining the chat room now. And if you're watching this in the replay, obviously you won't be able to join the chat room, but you can follow along with us. You can watch the chat and see how things are going and see what other people are talking about. And of course, if you have questions or things you'd like to talk about, we can do that as well. You'll see there are folks in the chat room here from Brooklyn and Maryland and Nigeria and Arizona and Louisiana and Las Vegas, Nevada. We have Ghana and Charlotte, the Queen City. Oh, I have an exam tomorrow. I'm assuming it's the Security Plus, although it doesn't have to be. The question is, what is the last moment advice? The last moment advice, probably a week before your exam or less, or a day, you grab the exam objectives. They'll tell you what you need to know. They just go through every bullet. Do I know that bullet? Could I explain that bullet to someone else? Yes, check. Do I not know this bullet? Could I not explain that to someone else? We'll circle that one because that's another one we can do a last bit of studying on. So I think that's your best bet. I think that's the best checklist you will find is the exam objectives, bar none, period. That's where you should go. So that works for me. All right, we've got, do a last minute check here. Cameras are looking good. You can kind of see all the top four, really the top six are camera inputs. Really the top eight. I don't have cameras for those. What should we do for the last two cameras that have nothing in them? I have these inputs in the switcher and nothing to do with them. We got to figure that out. We've also got, everything looks good there. We are recording. You can't really see my Cylon very well. He's down there. You can barely see him spinning around there. He's good. So we are recording there. We're recording online. The cache numbers look good. Cache should always be at about 3%. If the cache number goes up, then we have some type of problem there with internet. But we've been really good this past month or so. So now's the time for all that to change. We'll see how things go on the live stream today. And it's usually about 6 megabits per second or so to send my stream up to YouTube. Which test do I recommend taking, the 701 or 601? Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll talk about that in the first few minutes of the live stream. So that'll be good to do. I think I need more AC, though. We need more cooling. It is very warm and very humid in Florida today, so we are going to bring down the temperature just a little bit in the studio. And it also, although the lights don't, I have LED lights here. They don't put out a lot of heat and a lot of changes to the temperature. It does a little bit. Plus, I have a lot of equipment that's now running that normally isn't running. So it's being, you don't hear it, but that is being sent out into the room on the backside of the desk. So that's what that's about. The 601 expires at the end of July, not June, for those of you wondering. It's July 31st that the 601 is retiring. So that's an important date. To your point, that is a very important date. So that is how it's supposed to be. The heat is supposed to be 111 degrees in Arizona today. Well, that sounds, That sounds delightful. That's it's in freedom units, so we don't have. Somebody can do the math on that one to get it over to C. But there's no. But it's not really the heat; it's the humidity. Obviously, Arizona probably doesn't have that much humidity, so I wonder what the feels like differences are between the two. We'll have to figure that part out as well. Oh. I thought the cutoff to buy 601 was the last day of May. There is no cutoff to buy anything. They never cut off to buy anything. So you can buy a Security Plus voucher and take your 601 exam until the end of July. Anytime. A Security Plus voucher can be applied towards any exam. I know if you go to the CompTIA website, it says this voucher is for the 701. Guess what? It's just for Security Plus. It's not really for it is for the 701, but it's also for the 601 too. They just don't tell you that. But it's the same voucher. It's true. Please explain the front of all these devices. Looks something weird. You are so right. It's totally weird. There's a lot going on here. We got 4 minutes, so I don't know. We have a lot of time. We got a streaming box here. This is the Blackmagic streaming something. I forget the actual name of the product, but it's from Blackmagic Design. That's just the console. The actual device is in my desk. This is the video switcher, which is the Blackmagic 4K television studio. It is also, it actually sits on my desk. The entire unit, it looks like just a control panel, but it's actually the entire unit is there. We can probably take off so I can see the monitor. My monitor screen, these two here. Am I a DJ? Well, I am right now. I am pumping out the hits. So these two monitors here are the ones I normally use. Those are for my Mac Studio M1. And then this is the device that will be showing the presentations, MacBook Pro. And got an iPad here for time, and it will show me information on what the next slides are in a moment. So there's I know there's a lot of screens here. And to the left is the audio. This is the mixer. For all of the audio, actually an IP mixer. Everything's digitized. All the audio inside of it is IP. So that's kind of nice. A fully digital type mixer. That's there. So for folks that are on the chat and saying, what are you talking about? The 601 and 701 stuff. Do not worry. We got you covered. We haven't started the live stream, but in the first few minutes, you will learn all about it. It will be very clear to you. So does a Network Plus voucher work for Security Plus? It does not. So Network Plus voucher only works for Network Plus. Security Plus voucher only works for Security Plus. A Plus voucher only works for A Plus, and so on. You can't mix and match across voucher types, but you can mix and match across exam versions. So right now, you could take the 601 or the 701 exam. Any Security Plus voucher will work to book either of those exams. It's just what they don't tell you. Where do we get your voucher for discount? Well, we'll learn more about that in the beginning too, but I'm glad you asked. So you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers or follow the voucher link at the top of the page. Oh boy. Okay, we got a minute and a half before we get started. Let's do a final check. Audio check. Looks good. We've got, these are here. This looks good. Okay. The folks are online and checking in. Folks checking in from all over the place. We got you in the UK. We got folks in Canada. Welcome. We got lots of folks in the US checking in. Nobody here from Australia yet? They'll get here. Do not worry. We got a minute to go. 1 minute. 1 minute, Mr. Sinatra, and we'll get things going. See how things are here. Could probably already get that running. Oh, wait. I'm going to wait to bring that up so that I can confirm that my iPad is talking to it. So we'll make that happen too. If you used a Security Plus voucher the first time and failed, can you use the same voucher again? You cannot. On a normal voucher, you cannot. Once you've used it, it's gone. There are some vouchers sold by CompTIA that are retake vouchers, which at the moment are simply vouchers that cost twice as much as a normal voucher. I don't understand the point of that. But for a retake voucher, you can take an exam, and if you fail, you can take the same exam again with that same voucher code. But now that they cost the same, now that it costs twice as much to buy a retake voucher, there's no benefit. I don't understand why people would do that anyway. So buy a single voucher for a single exam sitting. That's your best thing to do. And here it's 12 noon. Look at that already. let's start up our keynote. Let's get a green light. Do we got a green light? If we hit the right button, we will. There it is. Green light. That does its thing. And I think it's time for a live stream. What do you guys think? I think so. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2024 SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. We get to see just how much you think you know about the Security Plus exam. I bet you'll do pretty good. Let's find out as we step through this. Thanks so much for joining us. A lot of folks are checking in today from all over the place. If you are here live, we would love it if you could join us live by hopping on and visiting this URL right here. Pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. That is our QA link where I will ask you questions during this first hour. It's a great place to go to find out what questions are available to you. The questions that I have are all new, except for this very first question of the study group. We'll see how well you can get into that Q&A and answer these. You can go to this here. Here's our question that starts us off for our rewind question. This is one from a previous study group, and it asks, a company would like to ensure all new software installations use unmodified code from the developers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would that be code signing, input validation, sandboxing, static code analysis, or secure cookies? Now, our standing rule in our live streams is that we answer online using the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please do not answer any of these questions in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will instead go to that link and go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the place you go. So hopefully you know the answer to this one. Maybe it's one you remember. Either way, if you get it right, you get it right. We're going to go with that. We'll come back to this question in just a moment. We got a lot of other things to talk about before we get to the other part of this Q&A session. But I'll first remind you that we do one of these study groups every month. When we're not here on our live streams, you can, of course, find us online on our YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have our Twitter, or what was formerly known as Twitter, is still called Twitter on my site, professormesser.com/Twitter. Eventually, maybe everything will get over to calling it whatever its name is today. I'm not sure what the name is. They simply just put an X down. So I'm sure that stands for something. And then professormesser.com/Instagram. So you can get a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question on the Instagram with a pretty picture, because that's what Instagram is there. So probably something that might help you. Now, as we were getting ready to go live with this live stream, there were a few questions asked about the current versions of the exam. So I want to answer those questions right now. We have if you have been watching this Security Plus live stream for a while, you know, for the past 3.5 years or so, we have had a version of the exam available called the SY0-601. It was released on November the 12th of 2020. We remember those times, don't we? Way back when. Now, of course, as we sit here in 2024, you'll notice that this version of the exam is retiring on July 31st. So as we sit here in July or June 2024, this retires at the end of next month. So if you are starting your Security Plus studies, this is probably not the version you want to start with. We'll tell you the version you would like to start with in just a moment. The one that probably most important, if you have been studying for your Security Plus and you've got all of your study materials, our 601 study materials, you've been studying for months and months and months preparing for this exam, you better hurry up because you have a month and a half and this exam goes away forever. So make sure that if you have been studying for the 601, make sure you get all of your studies done and you take and pass the exam before the retirement date of July 31st, 2024. It's coming up quick. And there will be people taking their exams all the way up until that final date. I assure you, I would not recommend that you be one of those folks, however. It is a single exam. It's 90 minutes in length, or at least that's how much time they give you. You also have, if you are to look at this exam, so we just lost power on the entire thing that shows us what we can do for a presentation. That's okay. We have a backup, everybody. Don't worry. If you're ever trying to figure out how to get around without any power in a laptop, this would be the place to go. It's the beauty of a live stream, though. So let's bring up a different presentation, and I'll just flip around between them. There it goes. We'll have to find out if I plug in this USB, if it's really going to give me power. I question this at this point. Let's keep going through this presentation, though. I have another copy of it that is on my other screen that you can't currently see, but I do have another copy of it. So we'll bring up that study group. It's rebooting on the other machine right now, so don't worry. Oh, it's even trying to figure it out as we go. So maybe we'll just jump over to the existing one instead of having to recreate the wheel. That's the beauty of a live stream. And for those of you that have been watching for a while, you know, not the last time that's happened. Not the first time that's happened. Won't be the last time that's happened. So if we look at, there we go. See, it's right there. Single exam, 90 minutes long, maximum of 90 questions. The passing score that you need to get is between 100 and 900, an odd scale, and the score you need to earn is a 750 on that scale between 100 and 900. And of course, we have all kinds of different questions on this exam. Most of the questions are multiple choice, but one of the things that you will find on this exam is that there are performance-based questions. So we'll talk about what performance-based questions are in just a moment as well, which is another important one to keep there. Now, there is a new version of the exam that was released in November. So this is one that's already been around for almost 6 months now. This new version of the exam is the SY0-701. And this one is not retiring until probably around May of 2027. So this is the one you want to shoot for, especially if you're someone who is currently trying to get into learning what you need to know for the Security Plus exam. You've not been studying for the 601 before. And if that's you and you're just starting this effort, this is the version you should be studying. So make sure that all of the videos you're watching are specific to the SY0-701. Make sure that all of your books say SY0-701 and that all of your other study materials are for the 701. You do not want to use 601 materials to study for the 701 exam. Although the difference is only one number, the 6 and the 7, the content of the exams is quite different. And you will not do well on your exam if you study for one exam and go walk in and take a different version. That would be a very bad idea. So do not do that. A super bad idea. This also is a single exam, though. The structure of the 701 is identical to the 601. One exam, 90 minutes long. You need to get a 750 on a score from 100 to 900. That's identical. And it's the same format, multiple choice-based questions and performance-based questions. So you really can't go wrong no matter which one you choose, as long as you're able to get them all done by the 31st of July, which at this point is very short time frame. So for most everyone, you're probably going to be taking or working towards the 701 exam. For those of you that have already been studying for a while and you're finishing up your studies, you may be taking the 601 exam, and that's perfectly reasonable. The thing to keep in mind as you're trying to determine which one to take is that it doesn't matter which version you end up taking and passing, you earn exactly the same certification. So if you pass the 601 exam, you're Security Plus certified. If you pass the 701 exam, you're Security Plus certified. It's exactly the same certification. There's no 601 or 701 that is written into the certification version that you have. So that's an important consideration. That doesn't matter which one, you are just as Security Plus certified as someone else, regardless of which version of these exams you pass. So if you are starting right now, take the 701. Save yourself the worry of having to study. And quite honestly, only less than a month and a half until the 601 is gone. That's not enough time to study for this exam. This is a big exam that on average takes 2 to 3 months to study for. So that's why I tell people, go take the 701 if you're starting today. If you've been studying for the 601, finish up. You'll still have a chance to finish this up until July 31st. So now's the time to push down on that accelerator. If you've been studying for the 601 studies, you've been studying from your 601 book, you've been watching the 601 videos, now's the time to finish that up and go take that exam. Now, of course, on our site, we have materials for either one of these exams. If you're starting your studies with the 701, you'll find there is an SY0-701 Success Bundle on our website, which includes course notes, practice exams, downloadable versions of our videos. We have those available in MP3 audio format, and there's other features that come with that as well. You can always find that on our website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/701SB for our 701 Success Bundle, or simply use the menus on the main page of the website to find the Success Bundle. We also have this video available for replay on YouTube immediately after we're done with the live stream, so you can always go back and look at it later. Or if you're wanting to catch up on older live streams, you can always go back in time and look at our whole archive. And I do publish an audio-only version of this in a podcast format. You can find that on our website at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. Great place to go to be able to find A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study group replays. We also have if you look at the YouTube video description, we have a list that shows you a timestamp of everything that happened in this live stream. Obviously, we haven't made this up prior to the live stream. This has to be created afterwards. And it is my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay. Hi, Lori. How's it going? She's going through this entire replay probably at 2x speed and writing down all of these timestamps for you. So this allows you to go back about a day after the live stream and find exactly what you're looking for and jump to it very, very quickly. You can find that on our YouTube video description about a day after we are done here, a day or so. Also, when we are not doing a live stream, we're over on our Discord. It is our chat and study session. It's a great community of people there that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications. You can find out more from our website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord or use the Discord link in the upper right corner of our website at ProfessorMesser.com. This will give you access to join our Discord and be able to chat with us when we're not here on a live stream. There's a lot of great people in that. Even when I'm not in there, there's always somebody studying and trying to get some work done. And it's a great group of people there that can help answer your questions. I will also tell you that eventually you'll need to take your Security Plus exam. And this Security Plus exam is one where you can go to the CompTIA website and pay full price. Or if you happen to be in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers and get a discount on your voucher. Why would you pay full price when you can get exactly the same voucher on our site? And it is one that gives you an enormous discount. I'll say enormous because it actually pretty significant discount for the Security Plus. You can have a look at that on our site. I also give you something for free. You go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers and buy the voucher there. You get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook where I put together a list of all the tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years, not only during my study process, but tips you can use during the exam that could potentially get you some extra points. You can get that for free when you buy the voucher, which is already discounted at the Professor Messer website from ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier. The question is, a company would like to ensure all new software installations use unmodified code from the developers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it code signing, input validation, sandboxing, static code analysis, or secure cookies? We will stop our poll, and we can see that 76% of you say the answer is code signing. We have 15%, though, that say the answer is static code analysis. And from there, it drops down to single digits. 4% for input validation, 3% for sandboxing, and less than 1% for secure cookies. Well, if you are deploying an application, you're installing a new app, you've probably seen this at some point in Windows. Certainly, if you're installing a brand new device driver, you will see this, and it will prompt you and say, we've checked the signature on this application, and the signature is from Microsoft. Do you want to continue installing this? And it will tell you exactly who has digitally signed this particular executable. This is a great way to confirm that the executable that you are installing is identical to the executable that was sent from the developer. Nobody has modified that code. Nobody has snuck any malware into it. Nothing has changed from that code since the time it left the developer. There can, of course, be things that happened before the developer creates the digital signature. That's a different set of problems, but this certainly confirms that the executable they created is the same executable that you are installing onto your system. So that becomes very, very useful. Using the digital signature functionality is how we're able to make that happen, and it is a very, very useful function. Perhaps more importantly, it's very useful if it doesn't match the signature. It will absolutely put a message on your screen and tell you, do not install the software. It does not pass the digital signature. There's a problem. You need to figure out why your executable is different than what was signed by the developer. So another good thing to think about. And a lot of you remember this one from last month, obviously, because we did not get 76% of you answering that question. So hopefully this is something that you are pretty familiar with. This code signing function is something now built into practically every operating system, and it's something that is an important part of maintaining the integrity of the applications that we are installing on our systems. Just another security check that you can do to make sure things are going to be okay when you install that software. Sometimes it's not enough just to trust that it's going to be good. It's nice to maybe have a digital signature to add additional integrity to that trust that we already have. So that is our multiple choice question that gets us started, our rewind question of the month. Now let's shift gears and have a look at a different type of question. This question is not multiple choice that we are about to do. And that's because if you sit down and take your exam, this is an important thing to consider. If you've never taken a CompTIA exam before, what you'll find is that the first set of questions on your exam are not multiple choice. They're anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt. They might show you something on the screen and have you drag and drop things. Maybe you have to put things in a particular order. So I have for you, as I do with every live stream study group, I have for you a brand new performance-based question of the month. So let's start with this question. And the question this month is match the device to the description. I have 4 devices on the screen, and I want you to match up what those devices are. Now, you'll notice, although I have 4 devices listed, I have 7 descriptions, which means there will be 3 of these left over at the end. So for extra credit, in fact, as you're looking at the 3 that are left over, tell me what those 3 things are too. Now, if you would like to answer this, or you can even just match these up by, you don't have to type in the whole thing. Simply go to professormesser.com/QA. And if you think perhaps they're already in the right order, all you have to put in is 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. Boom, you're done. Submit that and you're finished. Now, I will not be compiling these statistics. This is more of a fill-in-the-blank type of answer online. But this is a question that hopefully you can match things up pretty well. Now, because there are 4 devices but 7 descriptions, it is possible you might get some of these right and some of these wrong. You could get none of these right. That's one of the challenges. And this is one of the ways that CompTIA tends to ask these kinds of questions on the exam, because if it was 4 devices and 4 descriptions, you could really line this up to get 100% if you knew most of these. But when there are 7 descriptions, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So I wanted to give you the same feel on this sample version of a performance-based question that you would get on an actual performance-based question. Hopefully that gives you some perspective. Some folks in the chat are saying that you're having questions about the video stream that you are receiving. You are receiving that stream from YouTube directly, not from me. So it's all between you and YouTube. If there are any issues that you're having, you may want to consider hitting the cogwheel at the bottom and going down to a lower resolution. Maybe that will save you a little bit of bandwidth and free up some of the stuttering or issues that you might be seeing. But my stream is going directly to YouTube. They are recompiling the stream. They're doing some things to the stream to make it more efficient for you, and they're sending it down to you directly. So that's, from my perspective, though, I think we're in pretty good shape. You're doing fine there. Let's see how you did with this question. We'll go through the question, which is match the device to the description. The devices are sensor, WAF, NGFW, and load balancer. And the descriptions are backup and manage certificates for all company web servers, use multiple servers to support a single application, forward traffic based on a destination IP address, allow or block network traffic based on a network name, based on an application name, block application attacks to a web server, access a protected network from an external connection, and gather performance metrics from network traffic flows. Let's see how well you did with this one. Let's step through these one at a time, and we'll start with sensor, and we'll figure out what a sensor might connect with. If you go through the entire list of all of the things that are there, I think we can have the sensor best fitting answer G, gather performance metrics from network traffic flows. That's a very common use. In fact, if you are doing anything with NetFlow or SFlow or any of the type of flow-based monitoring systems, then this is a very common device that you would put into the network. It would be a sensor that is specifically designed to capture those metrics and report back to a centralized management station. This is something we use all the time in network management and in security management to be able to watch traffic on our network and compile performance metrics and, in some cases, information that we might be able to use after the fact to be able to investigate security issues. Those are sensors, and they match with G, gather performance metrics from network traffic flows. The next device is a WAF. A WAF. W-A-F. A WAF. And that matches with answer E, block application attacks to a web server. A web application firewall. The answer was sort of in the name of the acronym. This is one of those that if you knew the acronym, you sort of knew the answer to this one. WAF, a web application firewall, very different than a traditional firewall, or at least what we traditionally think of as a firewall. Today you have the traditional firewall or traditional or now newer next generation firewall is what we would put at the ingress egress point of our network. That's the point where we have traffic and information going out to the internet and back again. It's a very common place to put a firewall. And many organizations put firewalls within their own networks on the inside. But if you have a wireless router at home, that's actually a firewall. So that's your connection between you and the internet. It's what's protecting you and all of the data that's on your systems internally. A WAF is designed to block application attacks. So, for example, a SQL injection is a very common attack type that a WAF is designed to block, and a WAF can do this without having any prior knowledge of a known attack type, which means it will find magically somehow within its logic a type of database injection that no one had ever seen before, but it's able to identify it and block it anyway. That is a WAF, and very often organizations will have a next generation firewall and will have a WAF because a WAF is different than an NGFW, and an NGFW is very different than a WAF. In fact, our next question is on NGFW, a next generation firewall. That matches best with D, allow or block network traffic, not based on port number, although a next generation firewall can certainly block based on port number, but the next generation part of a next generation firewall is one of the major reasons it's next generation is that it can identify the applications on your network, and even more detailed, can identify functions of an application on your network. For example, if you are on Facebook, you can read Facebook, and you can set up a next generation firewall rule that says everyone in the office can read Facebook. You can create another rule that says block any posting to Facebook. So you can read Facebook and see what other people are doing, but as soon as you try to submit something to Facebook and post it on your timeline, it will get blocked at the firewall. These next generation firewalls are able to determine even minor functions of a specific application and allow you, the security administrator, to allow, block, or report on any of those. So that's an NGFW, allow or block network traffic based on an application name. And then lastly, we have load balancer. Load balancer matches best with B, use multiple servers to support a single application. In fact, if you are on the Professor Messer website right now, you are on a load balancer. I'm not sure what web server you're on. It's one of the servers that's connected to our load balancer so that if we get a lot of traffic to our site, we can split that load up across multiple servers. That is a load balancer. Now, that means that there were 3 other descriptions we did not choose. For example, nobody chose A, backup and manage certificates for all company web servers, or at least it's not one of the available answers. Another answer we did not choose is answer C, forward traffic based on destination IP address. And the last one that we did not use in this example was access a protected network from an external connection. So I told you we could do some multiple choice and, well, not multiple choice, more like fill in the blank, but have you fill in the blank of what we did not choose. And that might give you a couple extra points. I'll give you bonus points for all of those and see how that works. So backing up and managing certificates for all company web servers is along the lines of someone installing a hardware security module as HSM. HSMs are used mostly in very, very large environments, although there are some flavors of HSM that can be kind of a personal HSM. But you see these mostly in very large environments where you have tens, hundreds, or thousands of servers, and you need to manage all of the certificates on all of those devices. It's an easy way to do it. You can make sure that all of those certs are safe by having them maintained in a hardware security module. HSM is what we call it, and that's something that you'll probably find in the data center. Then the next on our list that we did not use was forward traffic based on destination IP address. Well, if you have been doing anything with your network, or maybe you've already passed your Network Plus, you probably got this one right. That is the function of a router. Routers identify the destination IP address, and they make a forwarding determination based on the IP address, and only in most cases the IP address. And the last on our list is access a protected network from an external connection. You probably use this functionality all the time in your virtual private network, or VPN. That was the device type that we were looking for. VPN concentrator, I guess, would be the specific device type we were talking about there. And that allows you to connect to a secure network over an insecure network so that you can encrypt all of the traffic being sent over that insecure connection. So matching these devices to the descriptions, we have a sensor is gathering performance metrics from network traffic flows. A WAF, a web application firewall, blocks application attacks to a web server. A next generation firewall allows or blocks network traffic based on an application name. And a load balancer allows us to use multiple servers to support a single application. Now, as many of you probably have seen, it's possible on this question that you could have gotten them all right. You could have also gotten them all wrong, but because of the structure of this question, you might have gotten some of them right and some of them wrong. So the natural question is, do I get any credit for that? Is there partial credit? Do I get at least a point or two from this? And the answer from CompTIA has even given us their answer on this. They say maybe. They're quite literal. Answer that is on their website and their frequently asked questions is, in some cases, they might give you some partial credit. In other cases, they might not give you partial credit. And they will never tell you whether you got partial credit or not. So ultimately, it doesn't matter if you even know if they do or not, because you'll never know if you got it all right or got it all wrong or got some of it right or got some of it wrong. You'll never have any idea because they don't tell you anything about the score at the end of the exam. All you get's a final number. You have no idea how that number was calculated. We put our trust in CompTIA and say, make sure you calculate that properly. And they say, yep, we got it. We're not going to tell you how we did it, but here's your score. So ultimately, it's interesting to think about, but from a practical perspective, it's worthless to think about because you're never going to know the answer anyway. Through your entire life, this is a mystery of the universe that you will never, ever know. And we'll just have to get more comfortable to that anyway and figuring out the details. You don't get a breakdown by security domain. You don't get any type of breakdown. All you really do get is some of these you got wrong in these particular topics. That's all they tell you. They don't tell you how many you got wrong or right in those particular topics. They just tell you maybe you got one wrong in that topic. That's it. So it's interesting that would be the case, but that is the way they do the scoring. So although you could get partial credit for this one, you could also not get partial credit, and you'll have to work accordingly from that perspective. So that is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you something to think about for your exam. Now let's shift our gears back to some different questions for questions that would be multiple choice based questions. Our next question on the list is a multiple choice question that asks, a mail server digitally signs all outgoing messages. Which of the following is used to validate these digital signatures? Is it DKIM, NAC, SMTP, Radius, or SPF? Got a few to choose from there. A mail server digitally signs all outgoing messages. Which of the following is used to validate these digital signatures? Is it DKIM, NAC, SMTP, Radius, or SPF? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. We will see how well you know this one. It's an answer. All of these answers are abbreviations. Every single one is an acronym. Every single one of these is an initialism, which I enjoy getting the emails, and I get emails every month of people explaining the differences between an acronym, an initialism, and all of those other things, and the 3 or 4 other things. But I call them all the same thing. They're all acronyms to me. So you'll have to just deal with that one of me constantly calling them acronyms, because I think that's pretty much what we all call them anyway, isn't it? It's an acronym. But I get quite an unusual set of questions or emails about that one. And I try to be better sometimes. I just can't bring myself to call any of those an initialism. I can't do it. We never say that out in the world. If we were in a meeting and we describe something as an initialism, we would get a stern talking to afterwards. Do you mean an acronym? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, you should probably just say an acronym, because that's what we know it to be. A mail server digitally signs all outgoing messages. Which of the following is used to validate these digital signatures? Is it a DKIM, a NAC, an SMTP, a Radius, or an SPF? Let's see what you chose. We'll close the poll. 51% of you say it's a DKIM, 31% say it's SMTP, and 10% say it is SPF. We have 2% that say NAC and 3% that say Radius. So the real question here, and when you're picking the best answer, we want to be able to figure out which one of these is used for doing this type of validation on here. This is the validation that we have available. Let's see if I have the right thing on my screen. I don't even have the right thing on my screen to break this apart. I have the breakdown of, I was probably going to tell you a completely different answer on here when working through the questions that I have. This mail server digitally signing everything is what we need to work through. And if you look at the SY0-701 exam, there are tons of acronyms you need to know. This came up in the chat earlier, and let me see if I can address it now. Is where do you even learn where all these acronyms are? How do you even break down where these different acronyms happen to be? And if you go to the CompTIA exam objectives, the official exam objectives tell you everything you need to know. They have a huge list of acronyms in the back. So that's my little tip for you today, that if you're someone who is working through all of the acronyms on this exam and trying to figure out where do I even find all of these, that's where you need to go. So let's bring up on my screen how this information is all digitally signed if you're working through these. Now, we had on our list, 51% of you say the answer is DKIM. And if you're someone who has been working through email security, you're probably familiar with this domain keys identified mail. This mail server that's sending out the mail is digitally signing all of this outgoing mail. There is a public key that is in your DNS record. And that public key is then validated by the receiving mail servers, wherever those receiving mail servers happen to be, receiving devices. Anyone who has the email coming in can perform a validation of this because you have chosen to use DKIM, the domain keys identified mail. That is exactly what you would use if you were going to validate digital signatures. Where would you even go to validate this? You go to your DNS and you have a look at your digital keys identified mail public key to validate that. So if you answered DKIM, 51% of you, You were spot on with that one. That is the answer we were looking for. And if you've been going through and working through all of your acronyms and trying to memorize those, you know that was the one that was the main answer here that we were hoping for. SMTP is a protocol that is used by mail servers to transfer mail between devices, but SMTP is not the thing that validates the digital signatures. If anything, it's the SMTP server that does the validation in most cases. So in this case, SMTP as the protocol itself would not be the answer we were looking for. 31% of you chose that answer. SPF, since we're talking about these other acronyms associated with email, SPF is a good example of those. In fact, I think I had the SPF breakdown here so we can really see the differences. If you are managing an email server, then you have probably configured SPF on your email server. You've put a message in the domain, the DNS settings of your domain to say, if you receive an email from me, it had to come from one of these servers. If it did not come from one of these servers, then its email did not come from me. And that's just a type of validation we can do using this sender policy framework, SPF. So if you were to look at my DNS server, this is an older version of it. We're at a single outgoing email server. I have multiple outgoing email servers that I use. So I have others that are listed in here as well. One of the services I use is one called Mailgun. It's one that sends all of the emails to you that you're getting from me from my website. So I have a record in my DNS that says, if you get mail from me, even though it's not from ProfessorMesser.com, it's coming from a Mailgun server, it's okay. I've told them that's where I'm sending mail from. And that's a good way that you can validate all of those different pieces through SPF. We also have others that were on here. Radius got 3% and NAC got 2%. Radius is a protocol that is used primarily for authentication. And this is one that has been around for a very long time. So you will often see Radius even used today. It's very simplistic, but very well used protocol for authentication. And a NAC or network access control is a way to describe the process of allowing or disallowing someone access to the network based on a set of authentication criteria. So if you wanted to connect to a wireless network, you would need to put in your full username and password, for example. There's no shared passphrase that you have to remember. You just put in your normal login, and that's part of the network authentication process and allows you to get onto that wireless network. And nobody's allowed on the wireless network unless they go through that network access control process, or NAC. The answer here, though, in being able to digitally sign and validate those digital signatures, that's all part of the DKIM process. So if you're someone who was working through that or trying to get more understanding of that, focus on those email security options. This is in, as a matter of fact, the answer to this one is in my section 4.5 in a video called Email Security. So make sure you spend time to have a look at what options might be available for you if you're wanting more information on that process. What does it look like on the DNS? How do you configure it on the DNS? It's all in that video. Well, as you can already tell, there's a lot of information on this exam. We've already talked about email security. We've talked about authentication protocols. We've stepped through the process of understanding more about next generation firewalls and web application firewalls and other pieces as well. Well, I have a summary of every video. And as you can imagine, there are 121 videos in my 701 course, over 15 hours of content. And although I wish everyone had time to go through all 121 videos, not everybody has that kind of time. So what if we could get everything consolidated down into one document? This would be my course notes, and my course notes are 96 pages long. They contain all of the text, all of the important charts, all of the important graphics, all of the important tables, everything in that video that you've been working so hard to write down, and you're getting a cramp in your hand and you can't keep up and you have to keep pausing and breaking your training up into separate chunks. What if everything was already here for you, already in one document? These are my course notes. And if you're someone who would like to have a digital version of the course notes, or what did I do with my physical version? They're not even here. I'm going to grab the physical course notes. That's the 601. That's the 601. I have a digital. Oh, there it is. 701 is up here. Well, not quite, but the same idea. We've got physical books written for this. This is the 601 book. I should have probably planned that out a little better than having you look at the back of my head the entire time. But physical is also nice to have too. So if you're someone who is wanting that physical book, I will ship the physical book to you. And while you're waiting on the physical book, you get access to the digital version online. Those books and the ability to quickly summarize everything from these videos in one place can be a useful study tool, especially if you want to have this available on your mobile phone, on your tablet, on your desktop, have it on your laptop, wherever you go, you can have this PDF on that system. You can download it right now and purchase it on my site. Go to professormesser.com/701CN. Let's do another question. Next on our list is this question that asks, a company has begun to work with started working with a local service provider and has created a broad set of goals associated with this relationship. Which of the following would best describe this document? Is that NDA, SAL, SLA, MSA, or MOU? Again, with the acronyms. What is that? Well, it's okay, because this particular question is one where you really do need to read into the question very carefully to figure out what the right answer might be. The question again asks, a company has begun to work with a local service provider and has created a broad set of goals associated with this relationship. Which of the following would best describe this document? Is that an NDA, a SAL, an SLA, an MSA, or an MOU? Got a few options there to choose from. This is one, all of these, by the way, are different document types to make this even more difficult. So you're never quite sure what the right answer is. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to figure this one out on our own. And this is a hard one to Google, so no Googling. You don't get to Google during your exam. No. Do not Google. You want to approach this as if we were sitting in the exam room. We are going through the exam materials, and we need to figure out what the right answers might be. This is how you would do it. So it's just you and the computer at this point. You get to choose A, B, C, D, or E in this scenario and figure out which one of these that you think it is. Certainly one that can be done. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these acronyms and working through them. This is one that I think if you were someone who was kind of working towards understanding all of these different document types, you've probably locked this one in. So hopefully this is familiar with what you're going through. Let's see how you did with this question. It asks this question here, and it says, a company's begun to work with a local service provider and has created a broad set of goals associated with this relationship. Which of the following would best describe this document? Is it NDA, SOW, SLA, MSA, or MOU? Now let's stop our poll and see what you chose in this list. Oh, we almost have we have an exact tie for first place. 35.76% of you say the answer is SLA. Also, 35.76% of you say the answer is MOU. I don't know who the 76% of you is. I think I'm already concerned about that. We also have, also in double digits, 13% say the answer is an SOW, 10% say the answer is an MSA, and then you have only 3% that say the answer is an NDA. The one that I wanted everybody to jump on was the NDA one. Let's go through what a couple of these different agreement types might be. One that is a very broad, goal-based explanation of what we are sitting down and working towards is called a memorandum of understanding. It's not a contract. There's really not even much of a legal binding associated with the MOU. This is more of a document that both sides create so that everyone understands what the point of this relationship happens to be. When you're working with a third party that's not your company, they have no skin in the game. They're someone who is a third party or a service provider or somebody else who's not part of your organization. We want to be able to make sure that everyone understands here's what we're doing with this relationship. And perhaps even more specifically, what we're not doing And that's part of the reason for documenting this in a memorandum of understanding. There's also a memorandum of agreement, an MOA. An MOA was not one of the available answers in this particular question. And that's because this is sort of a step up from the MOU, but it could potentially even be a legal document. People could be signing this one and everybody's being held to what these two things happen to be. So this is one where, for the purposes of this question, we really needed to know what an MOU was. That was the question that absolutely was going to come up for us as a broad understanding of what these things happen to be. And we did have 35.76% of you say it's an MOU. So that is the answer we were looking for. Those of you that answered MOU got this one right. But we now say exactly the same number of people have put down that it was an SLA. SLA was the answer, a service level agreement. A service level agreement is a contractual agreement that means that you are putting down very specific requirements for things like response time, coverage, bandwidth, or anything else that you could set a metric to. As for example, if you have an agreement with a third party, maybe you're buying new firewalls. And part of the agreement with this firewall company is we're buying 2 firewalls. If one of these firewalls was to fail, we need a new firewall on site within 4 hours. Well, that sounds good, but how can we keep somebody to that? Well, we do that in a contractual form through a document called a service level agreement, SLA, where everybody signs this. And there's even usually some penalties here that if we don't get a firewall within that 4-hour time frame, then we get that month free, for example. We don't pay our service for that month. So there's a good example of where we now we're expecting a service from you. If we don't get the service, there's a penalty. Now that penalty and the service itself are negotiable, and that's something that goes into the contract with an SLA, but that's very specific. That's a very specific value that in some cases would go to court, and you might have a judge decide, did they meet that specific contractual requirement? Well, that would be a service level agreement. So that's why in this case, when we're creating a broad set of goals associated with this relationship, nothing specific in that question. So that means it could not have been a service level agreement. It had to be something a lot less important, in this particular case, an MOU. And we have other agreements in here, statements of work and a master service agreement. Master service agreement and statements of work hand in hand. These are 2 different types of documents. If you have companies coming in all the time to perform services for you, maybe they're an HVAC company, maybe they're a network provider, maybe they are a service provider for your printers. And you might want to create a master service agreement that says, anytime we call you to fix a printer, here's how much we're willing to pay per hour. Great, we'll put that into a master service agreement. And then over the coming months, we'll call them up and say, we have a printer that's failed. It's printer number 6. It's located at this address. Here is the type of printer, the model number, and the serial number. Please go fix it. And by fix it, we mean that when you leave, we should be able to print to it across the network and have those printouts look the way they should. That would be a statement of work, a very specific list of things that are expected for this particular service that you're providing. So the MSA is more of creating the menu, and then the statement of work is more of you ordering off the menu. And the prices are already set, and everybody understands what the expectation is with that. So those 2 absolutely work in conjunction with each other, the master service agreement and the statement of work. And lastly, only 3% of you chose a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. We talked a little bit about this in the past, where an NDA is something that is going to be anything that we discuss will stay in this room, that nobody will talk about anything we're describing to anyone else. Non-disclosure, you will not disclose it. And that's what an NDA is designed to do. And I've been part of non-disclosure agreements for years and years and years. If you're ever sitting down with a third party, maybe you're sitting down with a company that provides you with networking or with your firewalls or with your routers, and they say, we'd like to tell you what's coming over the next year, but you can't tell anybody, so here, sign this document. That happens all the time in meetings like that. So somebody chooses to sign the NDA, and now everybody's bound by the confidentiality agreement of the non-disclosure. So that is what we would do to have that NDA and have that piece available. So that gives you a rundown of the different options that were available for this particular question. Maybe that gives you an idea of different agreement types and how you would use them in more of a practical term. So certainly something to consider. If you've been watching this video for Continuing Education Unit Credit, or CEU, as CompTIA calls them, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is you must follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. At the top or bottom of that site is a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. It's going to bring up a form. In that form, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2024 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, MSA SOW. Those are your super secret code, not even words. Your super secret code acronym initialisms of the month is MSA SOW. Both of those as perhaps separate words would be nice, since they are separate acronyms, MSA and SOW. And you can, of course, put anything else in that document you would like, because it's going to me. If there's anything you'd like to ask or anything you'd like to say, more than welcome to put it in there. I read through every single one of those. And then in about a week or so, I send you back a digitally signed email that certifies that you were here for 1 hour of this webinar category. And you could submit that as a Continuing Education Unit Credit, or a CEU, with CompTIA. Some people use these for continuing education purposes for other organizations as well, which is perfectly fine. Again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2024 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, MSA SOW. Or Master Service Agreement, Statement of Work, if you want to do that and being able to work through it. Hopefully that's something you can work along, be able to. What good are the credits? Those are usually used for renewing your certification. If you don't have a certification yet, that entire process is relatively pointless. There was no reason for you to do any of it, but at least it gives you a place to go with these. Hopefully that can give you an idea of what to choose. I think that might help you as you're stepping through them. We have time for more questions, though. Let's do another one. The next question on our list is this one. A company is upgrading their external firewall to a new version. Which security control category would best apply to this firewall? Is this technical, physical, operational, occupational, or managerial? Hopefully you've got some options there to choose from. A company is upgrading their external firewall to a new version. Which security control category would best apply to this firewall? Is it technical, physical, operational, occupational, or managerial? Do you think you know the answer? Follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. I want to figure out what the proper answer might be. Hopefully you're familiar with these security control categories and being able to work through them. This might be something to work on if you've not. It's the very beginning of the exam. So it'll be something you can always find very quickly to hop through what all of these might be. This one is interesting in its categorization. We will talk about these categories and how they are used in just a moment. I think these are pretty good to be able to have a feel of what the right answer might be. Hopefully you're able to kind of hone in on what that particular control would be associated with. That might be pretty useful if you're someone who is working towards your exam, knowing what these different controls might be, because you might get a question about security controls on your exam. Certainly something to consider. See how you do with this one. A lot of people have already locked in their answer. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a company is upgrading their external firewall to a new version. which security control category would best apply to this firewall? Is this technical, physical, operational, occupational, or managerial? Let's see what you answered. We will stop the poll, and we can see that 16, almost 70% of you say it's technical is the control, but 19, almost 20% of you say the answer is operational. 7% say it's physical, 4% say managerial, and nobody said occupational. Nobody came up with the answer there. Well, that's kind of because I made that one up. I ran out of security controls that were clearly incorrect, that I had to make up one that was absolutely incorrect in being able to work through them. So let's talk about these control categories. This is how we categorize the types of security and the many different types of security that we would use in these situations. So this is a very good example. Technical controls are controls that we have systems in place, something automated in many cases, to be able to secure that particular part of the network, the application, or whatever that resource happens to be. So things like firewalls are technical controls. Things like antivirus is a technical control. So this is a good example of where those certainly will fit into that particular control category. Now, keep in mind, and I think a lot of people may not even realize this, it is mentioned in this video, security controls in section 1.1, that it is possible that a security device could be categorized into multiple control categories. Absolutely, happens all the time. In this case, I tried to give you categories that could not be mixed up, that you could really only fit firewall into one major one of these categories. So in this case, we can already see that the control category that is certainly applies to firewalls, at least one of those would be a technical control. There are other types of controls, of course. Managerial controls are the ones that are, you can think of it, just applied by a manager, someone who creates a set of security policies and says, you must follow these policies. Well, that's a managerial control. And you may not even have any type of security method behind it or way to automate or force that. For example, you might have a security policy that says everyone's password must be 10 characters long, but you may not have set up your password checks in your systems to require 10 characters as the minimum. So although you have a managerial control that requires that people use that particular policy, you don't have any technical controls that are requiring that when people type it in. So it's a good example of where some of those control categories might fit. There are also operational controls. These are often controls that are implemented by people instead of systems. So things like security guards, that would be an operational control. And then you have physical controls. These are things that you might constantly think of as a physical thing, like a guard shack, like a fence. A fence is a very physical thing. I can't get into this system. I can't get into that office because there's a fence around it. The doors are locked. I can't get in. The doors and the fences are physical controls. So those are the control categories that you need to know about as far as this particular question is concerned. We have the technical control, which we know firewall certainly fits into. Physical control, although a firewall in many cases is a physical device, it's not always a physical device. You probably have a firewall that's on your operating system that you're using. Clearly not a physical thing. It can certainly live in the world of the virtual devices. So I would not categorize a firewall as a physical component or a physical security control. Operational security controls, as we've already seen, are security controls that are implemented as something that a person would implement and not a process or a procedure or a technical thing. So in this case, a firewall does not best fit into the categorization of a operational control. Managerial controls, as we've already mentioned, are controls that are applied through management or through policy. In this case, a firewall is not a policy. It is a device, and it is doing that control. So it would not be a managerial control. And an occupational control, you'll notice it never came up. That was the one I made up specifically for this question. You're welcome. In this case, the answer by far is the technical control. The idea of having a firewall and connecting it to your network and having it make those decisions is a technical method. It's a technical methodology, a technical control category, and that is the one that best fits into this particular scenario. And about 70% of you chose technical control, and you got that one absolutely right. So we do have other questions that we should be able to go to, but I'm looking at the clock and I see that we are near the top of the hour, but let's do some more. Let's do another question. Let's fit another one in. We may go into overtime on this one. Next question on our list asks this. The hash values from two different inputs are identical. Which of the following would describe this situation? Is this containerization, spraying, cloning, collision, or reflection? Got a few options there. The hash values from two different inputs are identical. Which of the following would describe this situation? Is it containerization, spraying, cloning, collision, or reflection? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, use the link on your screen at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Maybe you know what the answer to this one happens to be. See if you can lock it in. See if you know what these answers are. These are all things you need to know. I'm looking at the list of these. All of these are real things from your exam objectives. So I didn't make any of these up. So no fooling on this one. You really do. In fact, if there's any of these you don't know, make a note of that, because you need to go back to your exam objectives and have a look at maybe what that happens to be. That can give you an idea of what those are. A lot of people locked in their answer very quickly on this one. It gives me hope that maybe we all got this one right. Let's see how we did. The question again asks, the hash values from two different inputs are identical. Which of the following would describe this situation? Is this containerization, spraying, cloning, collision, or reflection? And 72% of you said the answer is collision. 20% of you, almost 21%, say the answer is cloning. And then it's down to almost nothing. Reflection got 3%, containerization got 2%, and nobody said spraying, which is a real thing, by the way. We'll talk about those in just a moment. But if we go with we can call it a vast majority, right? 72% of you say the answer is collision. Well, that's exactly what this particular situation is. It's a collision. We're colliding these hashes. Now, normally, if you put one type of input into a hashing algorithm, you get a certain output. And normally you put a completely different input into that same algorithm, you would normally get a completely different output. That's the idea behind these hashes. But there mathematically could be situations, depending on the type of collision algorithm and how it's calculated, there could be situations where you put different inputs into the hashing algorithm, and yet you get exactly the same output. A good example of this is actually on your screen. This is an example of the hashing algorithm MD5, where if you put the input at the top and you put the input at the bottom, and you can see they're basically the same thing. They certainly look very similar to each other, but you'll notice there's little red options, little red characters on the screen, and those red characters are different between these. So they really are two very different in their input, but the output that is available, that is created by the MD5 hash, is identical. Those collisions were identified in 1996. It's one of the reasons that if you ever are looking through any of your security materials, you might see something say, please don't use MD5 hashes for this, or MD5 hash is no longer available to use on this. This would be the reason why, is because it is susceptible to collisions, and that is why we do not use MD5 for this. Became very clear in December of 2008 when researchers created a certificate, authority certificate, that looked legitimate. It matched the MD5 hashing, and it actually was not a legitimate certificate. That could effectively break the internet if that was to happen. So we decided at that point, MD5 is not really for us. Let's try to use a different certification type going forward. And so that's why you see SHA-256 and other types of hashing algorithms used for this. That is a collision, though, and 72% of you said, yep, that's what I chose, is a collision. You got it absolutely right. Cloning is a method of taking a certain device or component or resource and creating another version of it, creating a separate entity of it. That's a clone. Not commonly used for situations where you're hashing or doing algorithms or having these cryptography, but cloning certainly common in our virtual environments where we have multiple servers that we need to create. And in those cases, we might be cloning servers to be able to have those identical when we're building out those virtual devices. Containerization describes the process. Well, there's many different definitions of containerization, but as it applies in the world of security, it's focusing on keeping information secure on mobile devices. There are obviously containerization methodologies and containerization techniques available in the world of server and resource administration as well. Not exactly what we're talking about for security. It's more of a system administration function, but you can containerize different applications. And there is a section of the 701 exam that does talk about containerization in that context as well. So you have to know kind of both contexts for containerization for the 601 and the 701. And then lastly, we have reflection, commonly used for different types of attack types. Reflective cross-site scripting, for example, is a good example of reflection. But in this case, what we were talking about is indeed collision, where you would have two different inputs and you would get the same output from a hashing algorithm. That is absolutely going to be a collision of worlds happening right there. Well, I think that is, well, we have time for one more question, I think. I know we're past the top of the hour, but let's see if we can squeeze one more question in. This is a question, though, that is not from the list that I have here. It's a question that I have written and is in my practice exams book. Now, if you've not seen my practice exams book, this is another one where I didn't grab the right set of books for this, but this one I have. Practice exams book, here it is. This is a physical book, 381 pages of Q&A, all for the Security Plus 701 exam. Now, we also have 601 versions available on the website as well. This is the 701, but the 601s are also there for those of you finishing up your 601 studies. This practice exams book is different, though, because it's not just a list of questions and answers. I think I'll show you by demonstrating this on my screen. I have the practice exams book here, and I've pulled out a single question from here. Let's have a look at this question. Again, no answers in the chat room, please. Please, no hints in the chat room. This is a question that asks, this is from B8, this question B8, it's in the second set of exams in this book on page 135, if you happen to have this book already. The question asks, the Vice President of Sales has asked the IT team to create daily backups of the sales data. The Vice President is an example of a data owner, data controller, data steward, or data processor. It's got to be one of those, right? Now, this is a PDF. So you could annotate this PDF. You could highlight different parts of this. You can change what you're seeing on the screen. You can modify the information that's here. If you're using a stylus, you can write on the screen. Maybe if you think you know the answer, you can highlight it and change this on the screen itself. It's a PDF. You can do anything you'd like to on this one. What's also nice about this is that I have the answers also in the book, but they're kind of further back in the book. You'll notice the quick answers on page 161 that will tell you, is it A, B, C, or D? We're on page 135, so you'd have to scroll forward to get to that. Or if you wanted the details, which is what I'd like to see, it's on page 170, which is certainly far away from 135. But because it's a PDF, I just put in hyperlinks here. So all you have to do is click on the word "the details," and it jumps to page 170, just like that. It has the question at the top about the Vice President of Sales. Is it the data owner, data controller, data steward, or data processor? And it tells you the answer is A, data owner. In this case, it tells you the data owner is accountable for specific data. So this person is often a senior officer of the organization. Now, that's good if you got it right. And now you confirmed, yes, I answered A. It tells me the answer is A. It explained to me that that was the right answer. The problem is I never get the right answer. I always get the wrong answer. And the thing I hate about most of these practice exams you find is that they never explain to you why you got it wrong. And I think it's an opportunity for all of us to learn as we're going through these practice exams. So in my book, every single incorrect answer is documented. If you answered data controller, here's why it's not the data controller. If you answered data steward, you know why it's not the data steward. If you answer data processor, now you know why it's not the data processor. I'll also tell you, if you got the question right, go ahead and read through the wrong answers, because you may find on your exam, it might be a question about data stewards or data controllers or data processors. And by going through the wrong answers, you may get a little more information that helps solidify those very important details in your brain. And that might help you on the actual exam. Also, if you read through this and you're thinking, I don't know what a data owner is. I don't know what any of this stuff is. This is all nonsense to me. How am I supposed to understand and answer this question? Well, at the very bottom, I give you a link to the video that describes where this came from. And I also tell you what exam objective it was associated with. So this is from the SY0-701 exam objectives, objective 5.1. The video is called Data Roles and Responsibilities. And there is, of course, a direct link to that video right here in the book itself. And there's a QR code if you choose to click that. You can use that if you've got the book version. So that's all in a PDF, but you also have the book version you can pour through. That's why we put the QR code there, so you can use your phone or your mobile device with the printed book version. Now that we're finished with that answer, I can click the back button in my PDF reader. Did you even know your PDF reader had a back button? It probably does. Go to the back button and we're back to where we started, and I can go to the next question that's in the book. That is my practice exams book. That gives you a feel for some of the things we can help you with your studies towards your 701 exam. There's also a version of this available for the 601 exam as well. That might help you as you are working through your studies. And maybe it's something that can give you a little more detail, a little more understanding, and maybe make you feel a little more comfortable before you walk into that exam room. Find out more on our website. Go to professormesser.com/securitype. I mentioned a couple times when we've gone through here that there is a set of exam objectives that is very important for you to reference. And these are free from the CompTIA website. Simply go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, or you can go to professormesser.com/objectives. Both of those give you a link that will get you to the CompTIA website. They'll ask you to put in some information, and then they'll give you download links where you can get your hands on these free set of objectives. These show you and tell you everything you need to know for this exam. They are a powerful and important study guide for you. Here's the set of objectives for the 701 exam. Let's see if we can put this in a single page so we can really have a look at it. Gives you a summary of the exam and what's expected, and then it goes through in a lot of detail everything you need to know in every section of this exam. And that's why I tell you, this will give you every bit of information and is a great checklist before you go into your exam to know, am I ready to take this exam or not? And it's free, which is even better. So great thing to have. Make sure you get a copy of that before you start your studies and read through it. And certainly before you sit down to take your exam, make sure you go through that list and make sure you are ready to go take your exam. Find that at professormesser.com/objectives. Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour of the study group. Stick around because I want to answer the questions you are asking of me. We call that our study group after show, and that comes up immediately after this, so don't go anywhere. In the meantime, I'll let you know that we do one of these study groups every month. Our next study group is scheduled for July. We have A+ study groups on the 16th and 18th of July. We have a Network Plus study group on the 23rd of July, and our next Security Plus study group is on the 25th of July. If you're watching this video and it's well past the 25th of July and you're wondering when is the next live event going to be, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and get an update on when the next event is. And some of these dates might change as well. And if you're wondering when the next live event is going to be, this is constantly updated. So as soon as I know there's a change, I update it here and update it on our Discord immediately. So you will always know when that's going to happen. Go to professormesser.com/calendar to find out when the next live event is going to be. So certainly something to consider and think about as you go through your studies. Well, this is the end of the first hour, but we're not done yet. I will take your questions in the chat in just a moment. Of course, you can always find us on our Twitter, our Instagram, or if you would like to, go out to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We're getting close to 1 million subscribers on our YouTube channel. I know, I don't get it either, but there they are. And we'd love for you to be part of that community. You can subscribe by going to professormesser.com/YouTube. Also let you know that we have our vouchers, our discounted vouchers available. If you happen to live in the US, Canada, or a US territory, save a few bucks by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundles, and so much more can be found on our website. Go to professormesser.com/701SB. Well, I think that's enough of that for now. How about we answer your questions in the next hour? Stick around for that. We got a lot more to come. We want to thank you for being here, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Okay. Let's take a sip. Let's set up a different camera. Let's change this over here. There we go. And let's see if we can get the other pieces of this available. I'm going to, on my screen, put up the view of the questions that you have submitted. And I want to be sure that I have the right one here. So I'm going to put some different information on my screen. This is what I wanted you to be able to see. So you are now, instead of me asking you questions for this next hour, how about you ask me some questions? You can submit questions for this second hour at any time. There's a tab at the top of your screen if you visit professormesser.com/QA, and it will submit and put your question into the queue. And then I will sift through the queue to see what questions are there. And hopefully we can find some good ones to pull out, and we can talk about those and see what's there. You never know what's going to be asked. I never know what's going to be asked. It's always a mystery. It's always something interesting. I go through this big list that's here and figure out what the different things might be available, and I kind of figure out if there's something we might want to share and talk about and figure out the details. You can submit it with your name, or you could submit it anonymously. Doesn't matter to me. And we'll have those there to break those out. Let's go through the list now and see what questions are here. We were talking earlier about the continuing education unit credits. There were a couple of questions that came up about those. So let's talk about those. This is from the Anonymous, who says, how do you renew your Security Plus certification? See, we're already thinking ahead. We're already trying to get to the renewal part. So let's talk about those and breaking all of those down and see what the differences are. This is... and the question specifically on this one from Anonymous says, do I have to do CEUs? And you don't. CEUs stand for Continuing Education Unit Credits. And this is a way that CompTIA gives you to collect a bunch of CEUs, submit those to CompTIA. And if you submit, I think for Security Plus, it's 50 different CEUs that you can submit. So you submit these 50 hours or 50 credits to CompTIA, and then you also pay a renewal fee, and then you can be renewed. It renews your certification for another 3 years. Now, the reason they have this is a lot of these CEUs are things that you're probably already doing. Attending a trade show, attending a training class, teaching a training class, writing content online, attending a live stream like this one. So there's different things that you can do to collect those continuing education units. And throughout a 3-year renewal period, these are things that you may be doing just normally throughout your normal workday. So it's a very easy way to compile all of the credits you need. All you have to do is pay the maintenance fee to submit those, and boom, you're renewed for 3 years. Something, just another thing you could do. Now, you could take the exam again. I don't know why you do that, but you could. It's probably the hardest one to do, is taking the exam again. That will obviously renew it for another 3 years. You could take a third-party exam, and many third-party exams will give you all of the credits you need or a portion of the credits that you need. You could submit those as CEUs. So maybe you take a Microsoft exam, a Cisco exam, a exam from another third party, and you could submit those if it's an exam that they will take. And there's a list on the CompTIA website of what exam and certifications are allowed. Most people these days, though, I think are probably opting for the CertMaster CE certification, recertification process, the renewal process. That's a an online method. It's a computer-based training that asks you questions. You have to get all the questions right in each section and then submit that, and you've renewed your certification. If you don't get all the questions right, you just take them all until you get them all right. It's one of those things. So it's a very quick way to do it. There have been people that visited our website and said, my certification expires tomorrow. How can I renew it for another 3 years? Well, it's too late to take another exam. It's too late to gather CEUs, but it's not too late to run through CertMaster CE. You can do that in a day. You can do that in a few hours. So purchase CertMaster CE, run through it in a few hours, submit it. They came back to our chat and said, okay, it took me a few hours, but I've done it. I've already checked. My certification is renewed for 3 years, and all I had to do was run through CertMaster CE. CertMaster CE costs a little bit more than submitting the maintenance fees for the renewal, but not that much more. And when you only have a day left, really was quite a deal and quite simple to do. So a lot of different ways to renew. That is just one of the many ways that you could renew. Hopefully that gives you something to think about as you're planning your renewal of these things. Here's a question, another anonymous question who says, hey, wait a second. Did they remove command line questions from the 701 exam? I don't think they asked it quite like that. I added a little bit of, well, I would say flair, but let's admit that wasn't anything close to flair. The thing about the 601 and 701 exams, they are quite different. And indeed, all of the command lines were removed from the 701. A lot of the rote memorization was removed from the 701. There were quite a few things removed from the 701. And I guess that makes sense because if you were to look at the differences between the 601 exam and the 701 exam, it is many and varied. There's a lot here to go through. I wonder if I have a full screen here that can kind of blow this up for you. Can I do a full screen? No, I can't. So we're just going to look at it in this odd format that I have here. The 601 exam is the big yellow circle on the left. The 701 exam is the smaller circle on the right. So as you can already see, if you compare this, the size of the circle in this particular view is based on the total number of objectives. The 601 exam, and for those of you for 3.5 years ago that go back with us, one of the first things you remember me saying when the 601 exam came out was, wow, this exam is big. Because it was a huge increase over the 501 version. And I said at the time, boy, this is big. In fact, it was so big, over 1,000 objectives in there. Now, what they did in the 701, you may look at this and say, wow, they really shrunk it down much smaller. That's not actually what happened. What they did was put it back to where it was with the 501 exam. They right-sized it back to where it should have been. So although it seems that they took out a bunch of stuff, they really, well, I guess they did take out a bunch of stuff, but they put it back into a format or size that was very similar before the 601 version. So in other words, they fixed it in the 701. 701 is a much more reasonably sized single certification exam. And I guess that makes sense. If you look at CompTIA's offering, they have the Security Plus exam. They have the CISA exam. They have the CASP exam. And they have others that on the security side that they're working on. But when the Security Plus, the 501 was out, we really didn't have all of those. And I think CompTIA was sort of starting to put everything into one exam. They suddenly realized, we can't keep doing this. Everything doesn't fit in one exam. Let's separate these out again. And I think they've done that with the 701, which has around 662 objectives in it. So a big difference between those two. The part that's important, though, and the thing I want to emphasize, if you take nothing else away from this diagram, is that the exam objectives that are shared between the 601 and 701 is about half of them, 49%. Let's just say half. About half of the contents of the 701 are also found in the 601. However, half of the objectives in the 701 are brand new, which means they dropped a lot of stuff off the 601. They had to because the circle's much smaller, right? So they got rid of a bunch of stuff that was in the 601, and then they only kept half of what was left over from that. So there are 338, or half of the 701 exam, brand new content. And if you're studying from 601 books and you walk into the 701 exam, half the exam is going to be foreign to you. Half of the exam will be different, things you've never seen before. And that's why I tell you so emphatically that you should absolutely only ever study from materials that match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. So if you are planning to take the 701 exam, only study from materials specifically written for the 701 exam. If you're planning to take the 601 exam, only study from materials that are specifically written for the 601 exam. So important that you do that. And that's why, because it's so different. If you study for the 701 materials, you're going to walk into the 601 exam and you'll have your hat handed to you. It'll be a disaster. Don't do that. Same thing if you reverse that. So it's a situation where you should study for the right things, take the right exam to give you the best possible outcome for passing that exam. So important. Now, of course, the 601 exam retires on July 31st. That is in about a month and 10 days from now. Month and I will say 10. So we're almost through today, right? So you have about a month and a week, a month and 10 days to finish up your studies for the 601. Not a lot of time. So work on getting that done in the amount of time you have left. If you're starting your studies right now, you should be studying the 701 exam. Just makes sense. And there's plenty of study materials out there for you. Make sure you are familiar with those differences. Make sure you pick the right one. Make sure you don't find yourself looking for the wrong thing and studying the wrong materials and going to take the wrong exam. That would just be awful. Waste of your time, waste of your money, and nobody wants that. Another question. This is from Raymond. Raymond says, what if we miss your live webinar of the study group? Can we still get CEUs just by rewatching your YouTube videos? And you absolutely can. And this is a big difference in things that CompTIA has done in the past. You have to submit your CEU request to me in the method that we mention in that first hour of the study group. And you must receive from me that email that certifies that you were here. So I have to provide you with that documentation if you are watching this on a replay. Technically speaking, if you're watching this live, in the past and even up to now, CompTIA has allowed you to self-certify yourself. I was there for the live event, and here you go. I think having the email, regardless of whether you're watching it live or watching it on the replay, is always a good idea anyway, because now you have something that you can present if you do get audited by CompTIA. And they do that in some instances. They want to say, okay, show us some proof that you were at this Professor Messer live thing. And you can say, oh, I have an email from him. It's also digitally signed. You could even confirm that I have not modified anything in this email because it was digitally signed by Professor Messer when he sent it to me. And that's why I digitally signed them. So there can be no question about the credentials that you use to prove that you have recertified. So you can absolutely earn the CEUs, but you have to submit your request and you have to get that response from me, and then you can use that for your renewal. Absolutely. And now, of course, here's the caveat. For those of you already thinking, wow, I need 50 CEUs to renew. Professor Messer's done well over 50 study groups. There you go. I'll watch 50 of those. I'll submit 50 study group requests. I'll get 50 emails back. We're all set up. We're all renewed. Nope. No. Oh, nope. They've already thought of this. So you can only collect a certain number of CEUs in each category. And this category that CompTIA calls this the webinar category. So for the renewal of your Security Plus, you can only submit 10 webinar category CEUs during any 3-year renewal period. We thought we had it. We thought we had a workaround. We thought we had a hook, but we didn't. Although 10's pretty good. So if you need 10 CEUs, you can use these webinars. You could go through 10 of these, and I would be glad to send you 10 emails that gives you the 10 CEUs. Then you would have to find 40 CEUs in other categories to renew. So as much as I would love it to have everybody watch all 50 of my older videos, that would be great for my metrics. Unfortunately, it's not going to help you very much. You might watch them anyway just to learn something, which is always a good idea. But if you're collecting them for CEUs, they're not going to be able to help you very much. So sorry about that. Bummer, huh? Next time, we'll have to see what other options we have. We need to come up with other CEU ideas, if that's something. I see most people, I think, are probably going to do different methods than CEUs, though. I wonder what the differences are. I should ask that of the CompTIA folks someday. See if they know the breakdown of how many people renew their certifications in each one of those methods. I'd love to see the percentages on that. Along those same lines, question from the chat says, can I use this session, this Security Plus session, as a CEU for A+? Well, this is a good question. Wouldn't that be great if we could? The best way to tell is to go to the CompTIA website. On the CompTIA website, I'm in the continuing education section of the website, and they have a how to renew in here. The renewal, if we're talking about CEUs, we can renew with multiple activities. We can, I think the one here is participate in IT industry activities, or is it complete training in higher education? Let's click on complete training. Yeah, complete training says attend a live webinar. You can earn 1 CEU for each hour you attend. You must attend the webinar during your 3-year renewal cycle. And here's the key. At least 50% of the course content must relate to one or more of the exam objectives for the certification that you're renewing. Well, as we know, in the A+ exam, there's an entire section on security on the 1102, on the Core 2 exam. There's a huge section on security. This is a Security Plus webinar. Therefore, this absolutely relates to a whole section of the exam objectives on the A+, which means that this live stream would and could be applied towards renewal of an A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus. No problem, according to the requirements that CompTIA has already created on that website. So that at least gives you a feel for what you can do here. So yes, if you're planning to renew your A+, this would absolutely give you a CEU. You can only use a certain number of webinar category CEUs for your renewal. However, it's not 10 for A+, it's like 4. You can't use as many of them, but also you only need like 25 to renew your A+, 25 or 30, something like that. So that it's a big difference in number of CEUs that you need depending on the certification that you're working towards. Okay, more questions. I think we've talked about renewals now for a bit of time. Let's see if we can shift gears on this a bit. The question, we talked about this in the earlier part of the live stream, but it's worth talking about. This is from Cecilia, who asks, hey, does CompTIA give you partial credit on the policy or performance-based questions usually? I know they have discretion, but what is the norm? Well, I'm so glad you asked what the norm is for Cecilia. The norm for CompTIA is that there is no norm, and they will never tell you what the norm happens to be. Let's go to the CompTIA website, and I'm going to take you to a page on the CompTIA website called Performance-Based Question Frequently Asked Questions. The Department of Redundancy Department. We have a question on here that asks, if we scroll down a bit, is partial credit given if I answer part of a performance-based question correctly? And their answer, their unequivocal, obvious answer is, there may be questions for which partial credit is offered. However, exam questions and their scoring are confidential, so no further information can be provided regarding which questions may offer partial credit. So their answer to you is, maybe, maybe not. And to the answer, or to the question, the very good question that Cecilia asks, I know that they have discretion, but what is the norm? And the answer is, they won't tell you. They won't tell you what the norm is. They will never tell you. Which means you will go through your entire exam. You will pass your exam, fail your exam. The results of your exam will be presented on the screen. You will see a score on the screen, and you will have no idea how that score was created. You don't know how it was graded. You don't know how it was compiled. You don't know anything about how they came up with that score. And there's no way you will ever know, ever, in the life of the universe. They are not telling you. You know, maybe someday in the far distant future, they'll finally say, we're shutting down. And by the way, here's how we scored these exams. So maybe at that point we will find out. But until then, it's a mystery to all of us. It's a mystery that will just end with the expiration of our sun, I guess. We will never know. It's just one of those mysteries of life that we will have to deal with and going forward, because we just will never, ever know. Now, we can think about it. We can talk about it. And we can describe what we think they're doing. And we can talk about questions we think might have it. But the problem is, once you get your score, you will never know if they applied partial credit or not. There's just no way to tell. So although we can talk about it and think about it and speculate and give our own ideas of what they're doing, and certainly they're doing this and perhaps they're doing that, ultimately we have no clue. In fact, many people will say, well, the performance-based questions clearly must have more points associated with them. Clearly? How about non-clearly? How about maybe what if the performance-based questions were almost worth nothing and the multiple choice questions were worth more? They certainly could be. There's nothing in the documentation from CompTIA that says it could be otherwise. Maybe the performance-based questions are everything. Maybe the multiple choice-based questions are worth nothing. So that's the problem, is you don't know. You'll never know. We can fight about it or arm wrestle you for it. But ultimately, there's nobody that has an answer. So don't worry so much about it. So that's my recommendation, is don't even worry about the scoring. The scoring works out on its own. You're never going to be able to wag the dog on that one. The scoring will work out to be whatever the scoring is at the end of this. If you focus on knowing everything listed in the CompTIA exam objectives, it won't matter how they grade it. You're going to pass because you know everything. So focus on the objectives. Stick to the objectives. If you know the objectives, you'll be in much better shape. We're already fighting about scoring in the chat room. I'm happy to have done that. And the answer is, all of you could be right and all of you could be wrong. That's sort of how it goes with the scoring piece of it. So that's stick to knowing the content, and you won't ever have to worry about how it's scored. That's my recommendation. Let's do some more questions in here. We'll keep going through this list. This is a very good question from Anonymous. Anonymous, who asks, hey, do I need to know every single acronym on the CompTIA exam objectives? Many of them I have never seen before, despite having done many practice tests. And you are absolutely correct, Anonymous. There are acronyms in that list that you will never see listed anywhere else but on that list. And I think they do that intentionally. I'm not sure why they do that, but I think they've gotten better in recent years. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's pop over to the exam objectives while we're here. You may recall we've already looked at the exam objectives while we were here. Now I'm going to go back to this full screen view, and we're going to go over to the very back of the exam objectives, past section 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And back here is the CompTIA Security Plus SY0-701 acronym list. The following is a list of acronyms that appear on the CompTIA Security Plus 701 exam. I don't know that that's really true. Candidates are encouraged to review the complete list and attain a working knowledge of all listed acronyms as part of a comprehensive exam preparation program and breakfast. The acronyms listed here, most of these are things you probably will pick up during an organic, normal training process. So if you go through my videos, you already know what AAA is. You already know what ACL is. You already know what AES is. You already know what AH is. Artificial intelligence. AI is probably, is it even in there? It might be in there. AIS, I'm not sure if AIS is in there anywhere or why we would use it. ALE certainly is. So you can see a lot of these acronyms you've probably already run into as you look through the exam objectives. However, you will run into some in this list that are really not part of the rest of the exam objectives anymore. I don't think the attack list, is that part of 701 anymore? I thought they removed all of those different frameworks from the 701. If I think back into my 601 versus 701, they got rid of all the frameworks, but that is the attack framework is listed there, adversarial attacks, techniques, and common knowledge. That's no longer in there, but they still have it in this list. Others that are, you'll run into these every once in a while, like this one, closed circuit television. Is that really in your security acronym list? CCTV? I mean, we have to know about cameras and physical security and that type of thing. And certainly closed circuit television. I think I even have that in my video on physical security. But it's a really good example of how some of these in here absolutely 100% fit into the scheme of Security Plus. Others in this list, I'm not so sure they really should be in here. Most of these, though, are pretty spot on. So if you were trying to get a very good understanding of some of these acronyms that could pop up on the exam, this is a very good list to go from. You might run into one or two or three in this list that probably aren't quite as accurate or necessary. Things like a key encryption key, a KEK. I don't know. Those are absolutely a valid security acronym, but they don't really appear in the exam objectives. So that's one of those sort of on the edge. I know that's why I chose that one. It's sort of on the edge of needing to know that. So here's how I would recommend you do this then. Knowing what we know about these acronyms now, here's what I would recommend as you go through this list. So you run into this, and the acronym here is MD5, Message Digest 5. Now, knowing that might be useful. Message Digest 5 might help you understand what that particular acronym means, MD5. But it gives you no context beyond that. So if you are planning to study these acronyms, don't just study abbreviation and the full names. That's not going to give you the best possible perspective for the exam, because a lot of these questions may give you the acronym with no context. So I would always, if you're doing flashcards or trying to memorize, MD5, what does that stand for? Message Digest 5. What is that? Oh, that's a hashing algorithm. It is, in fact, we saw that today. It's a hashing algorithm. It was used. We don't use it much anymore. A lot of collisions. Done. Yeah, that's all you really need. It's just that level of understanding of what does that do for you? How would you apply that technology in the world of security? So add some additional context to the acronyms that are on the list. Don't just study acronym words, acronym words, acronym words. That's not going to help you. You really do need to understand what those are used for, how you would apply them, what is important about these. Why am I learning that acronym? That's what you have to really know. And I think that's going to be the most valuable way to go through that list. Don't just study abbreviations and words. There's limited effort, limited reward in doing it that way, because it's not going to give you everything you need to know for the exam. So think about that too. Other questions. Let's go through some more that you have. Great questions today, by the way. You can submit your question anytime. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your questions into the list. Since this is timely, we'll go with this question from Kyle. Kyle says, I see the new Network Plus materials coming out on YouTube. Yes, it is. If you're studying for Network Plus, the 009, we've started to release our new 009 training videos onto the YouTube, keeping the streak alive thanks to you. We will continue to produce high quality and absolutely free training materials as long as you keep watching them. That's when I know that we won't need to do them anymore, I guess. The question from Kyle, though, asks, will the practice exams and course notes release soon as well? I think we'll have course notes available for the new Network Plus Intent 009 somewhere in the next week or so, or 2 or 3. I don't want to we're compiling. We have all of the content. I'm laying out the content into the document right now, and it's going very well. That'll be done relatively soon because it's all written. The practice exams, we have never released, we've never produced Network Plus practice exams before, but we have a goal to create Network Plus practice exams for the N10009. So if you are looking for practice exams for 009, course notes will be available in the coming weeks. Practice exams, the goal is to have them available in the coming months. So that gives you at least some very broad some calendar settings you can put up there. That would give you an idea of when that would be coming. So hopefully that can help you along those lines, and maybe that will give you some perspective or understanding of when you can expect to see those posted. And when they are available, they'll of course be available on the Professor Messer website. And of course, I'll talk about them constantly and you'll be sick of it, which is fine too. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. I have quite a few. So we were talking about control types earlier, and one of the things that came up, one of the questions, even saw this chat room, Edward asks, we talk about guard shacks. Can a guard shack fall under both a physical and an operational control type? Can also be managerial. Absolutely. A single security component can be part of multiple control types. They're not down to just a single control type. Certainly, there are control types that fit into 2 or more different categories, and that's perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable. There's no reason to narrow everything down. Now, the question I posed to you today, there was only one of those that you could choose, and that was intentional. I only chose control types that would only take you to a single one of those answers. But certainly, there are certain security-based resources that would easily fit into multiples of those control types. Absolutely. And that means you got it. Well done. So let's do some more. We have others here. Let's talk about this one. This one is about the cost of these exams. So with the next coming exam, this new version, so we have in Security Plus, we have the 601 is been updated to the 701. For the Network Plus, the 008 is updated to the 009. And of course, every 3 years or so, CompTIA tends to update their exams. So the question is, will the cost increase? What CompTIA has traditionally done with the cost of these exams is they have introduced these exams or the costs associated with them. They tend to update at the beginning of the calendar year. I think this year they updated them in February. And they tend to update them just once a year. And those tend to be just differences in inflation. So a 3 to 4 to 5% difference in cost every year, something like that. So it's a good example of how the costs are identified. They don't tend to change the costs between different versions of the exam. They tend to change the cost once at the beginning of the year, and it just stays that way for the rest of the year until the next year comes along, and then they can decide whether they change the price or not at that time. There have been years when they've not made any changes to the prices, and there have been years where they have made changes, but it's not much of a difference every year. It's usually a cost of living difference or an inflation difference that they tend to put on there, but that's completely up to them. They can make the prices whatever they want, and they certainly have the ability to change those prices at any time. They just don't tend to do that. They tend to do it at the beginning of the year. So as these new exam versions come out, you probably aren't going to have to pay anything different. The 601 exam costs the same as taking the 701 exam. The 008 Network Plus costs the same as taking the 009 Network Plus. So it's a good example of that. Let's do some more questions. This is a question, and I'm going to change the question a little bit, Anonymous. This question originally asked, are you considering making a course on CompTIA Data Plus exam? And I'm going to change this question to be, are you considering making a course on fill in the blank exam? Because this is the question I get quite often, and it's a frequently asked question. Like, are you going to do this exam? Are you going to do this Microsoft exam? Are you going to make this CompTIA exam? Are you going to do an exam for the Cisco thing? Have you considered making an exam for this Red Hat thing? if someone asks, have you considered, the answer is absolutely. I've considered it. I think I've considered making training for every certification exam under the sun and other things that aren't certification exams on top of that. And we always come back to what certifications are the most popular, because that certainly is part of making a decision about making something that's valuable. It needs to be people would be interested in watching it. Also, we want to make something that will help the most number of people. So if there was a particular certification that was both very popular, but did not have the level of training resources that I thought might be required to be freely available, then that would be a good candidate for me to focus on. And I have a list of those. I literally list these out, and I just kind of keep a moving list, kind of a living list of what do I put at the top right now? What do I put as number 2? What are my top 5? If I had to create a new course right now, what would those 5 courses be? I have that list. I just don't have the time to do all of them. So it's one of those situations where I have to pick and choose the ones that make the most sense for what we are trying to do, which is to get you a job or get you a better job. Currently, that's A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, but that could certainly grow in the future. Data Plus, not on that list though. There are a few that just don't make that cut. And currently, you are the very first person since Data Plus has been released, which is 6 months now? You're the very first person to ask me if I would consider doing a Data Plus, which, although Data Plus is incredibly interesting from my perspective, I love the content on the Data Plus exam. It would be fun to do a certification on the Data Plus exam. I would learn a lot doing a Data Plus certification exam. There's just not enough people hooked into that right now. Maybe that will change in the future as things become more popular, as different certifications become more interesting to folks. You know, the popularity of these things come and go. And so maybe it moves up in the list. We never know, but I'm always open to the idea, and flexible with the idea. So we'll have to see, and what options are there. Let's take another question. This is totally off topic. We're going to come back to that one quickly. We're going to do another one first that's on topic. Then we'll do an off topic question. This is an on topic question. I have talked about this one before, but I think it's worth talking about. This question from Kevin, who says, how do you feel about the boot camps for those new to the field? By the way, pass my A+ using only your videos. Thanks. Congratulations, Kevin, first on your A+. Got that certification in your pocket. Thank you so much for also watching this live stream. Let's talk about these boot camps. This term boot camps is one that could mean a number of different things depending on who you're talking to. In the past, boot camps were described most commonly as a 1 to 2 week study session that puts you into a room with a bunch of other people. There was a live trainer, and you went through this content in a very fast and collapsed process to cram as much as possible into that 1 or 2 week period. And the idea would be that you're spending 12 hours a day. The nights, the days, that entire period is you learning this content. And the idea is that if you did that, you would learn enough after that 2 week period that you can come out of there and take your exam and earn your certification. The reality of that is very different. There is way too much material in the Security Plus, either 601 or 701 exam, to think that you could spend every waking moment for 2 weeks and learn everything you need to know to earn your certification. It is quite physically impossible to do. There's not enough time in the day. There's not enough, you'd have to stop time. You would have to rewind time and go through it again. You'd have to you'd have to have that time where you're just constantly cycling through the same day over and over again. Poxitani Phil is there, and we're going through the process, and we're learning to play the piano, and that's what you'd have to do, is do groundhog every time. the Groundhog Day would have to be what you would do to make it through that 2-week period, because 2 weeks isn't enough. 1 week is certainly not enough. 2 weeks is still nowhere close to being enough. It's impossible physically to cram as much as you need into that 2-week period and give you everything you needed to retain to be able to pass that exam. So if you are someone who is seeing a boot camp and you look into the details of the boot camp and it's 1 or 2 weeks long, don't even consider it. It's a waste of your time. Some people would say, well, here's what I'll do. I will study before going to the boot camp, and I'll go into the boot camp with a knowledge of all of this so that the boot camp is really just a final check. Well, at that point, you've already done all of the work prior to going to the boot camp. Why are you going to the boot camp? So that's the other side of this, is spending time preparing for the boot camp effectively is the boot camp. And now you're just attending a very expensive training class for no reason. The other ones, though, is that this boot camp term has changed through the years. So you may find that a university, an organization like a community college may be offering a Security Plus boot camp. But if you read into it, you might see that it is an entire semester in length. Well, that's not boot camp. That's a class. That's a Security Plus class. So that's not really, but they call it a boot camp because it is a marketable term. It's something people will see and go, oh, I'll attend that. Yes, we'll go boot camp. And they may even do this for people that are not registered with the university or the college. Because normally when you register for a university or college, you have to take a certain number of classes, a certain number of hours. And these single class may only be like a 3-hour course. 3-hour in the terms of the way they count college credits, a 3-hour college credit class, which means you usually meet for 3 hours every week for an entire semester. That's a 3-hour course. So that's what I mean by that. But that's a normal college class. Now, if that's what they're saying is a boot camp, love it. That's great. That's what you want. That's it. In the chat room, we've got folks that are saying my boot camp's 16 weeks long. That's although that's great. That's what you want. That's the type of thing. It's not really a boot camp though, is it? Is it? That's not really what a boot camp is. Boot camp is supposed to give you the impression that it is a very fast, high density, very quick learning is what boot camp implies. But as we found, and as people have even mentioned in the chat room right now, many boot camps are these just normal training sessions, which is still good. I don't care what you call it. Call it a boot camp, call it a training class, call it a meet and greet, call it a get together. I don't care what you call it. But as long as you're giving people enough time to understand the material, to come to really study up on it, to come back and talk about it, to maybe get some hands-on, that's the type of course that's, I think, is much better use of your time and your money than a 1 to 2 week boot camp. So anytime you see the term boot camp, just read into it, find out more about it, see what's going on with it. They're remarkable in how they are still going on. I still see 1 or 2 week boot camps out there for incredible amounts of money. And I don't feel that they're giving you the value that they're costing. So something that you can kind of focus on. Just an idea. If you're someone who is looking at different training options, take the term boot camp and really find out what they're really doing before you start committing your time and your money into that. There's no easy button, people. There's no simple way to shortcut around this, to take a 2-week session. There's no way to get this done any faster than you can reasonably do it. So that's why your mileage may vary, but your wallet will be very happy if you find the right type of boot camp to go to. So let's talk about off topic. I mentioned this is from Anonymous, who says, "Hey, what camera are you using? The quality is nice." I like the camera I'm using too, by the way, although I'm looking at swapping it out. Interestingly enough, love your setup too. Well, thank you. We like our setup as well. This is our setup. This is the station where everything is. The entire setup that we have here is all in the desk. So this is relatively new, that particular characteristic of what we have here. In the past, I have had pantographs from the ceiling that held large LED lights. I had streaming equipment in another room. I had separate cameras and things that were external and things were off. It was just a lot. But now technology, lighting, cameras, and all the rest are effectively can all just fit on your desk now. And they're even getting smaller. In fact, I can upgrade my mixer's too big. They now have a smaller mixer controller. That would be great for my desk. The video switching technology is getting smaller and smaller. It's on the top of my desk right now. And a lot of, although I think the screens could be bigger. I like enormous screens, but these are okay for what we're doing. So the question was, okay, what are you using? What is this setup that you have here? And everything is on my website. If you go to professormesser.com/studio, if I spell it right, it will bring up a studio breakdown. Almost everything is in here, almost. The mic that I'm using, which is a Heil PR40. I've always used the PR40s. They're fantastic. The camera that I'm currently using is a relatively older camera, but still quite capable. It's a very nice camera. It is an SLR, digital SLR, but it works great as a 4K video camera as well. And it's the Panasonic Lumix GH5S. So those familiar with cameras, you're like, that's like 5 years old, brother. Yeah, it is. But at the time, it was top of the line. As like anything else, as soon as you buy a new camera, a new thing for the studio, it instantly starts aging. So that's why I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of looking around for a new camera. I'd like to have something a little different. The Lumix, though, is working so well for me. There's an internal battery in there that isn't even working anymore. I have to update the time every time I power it back on. But it's such a good camera that I just haven't touched it. I'm thinking of updating this with one of the Blackmagic cameras that is just designed to be a video camera and not one that has all of these other SLR things on it. Because there are advantages to that, but there are also disadvantages to that. Having something that's designed to only be a camera for video might provide me with some extra capabilities. Maybe something that would integrate better into my video switcher. So different ideas. And there's other things here, like the video switcher I'm using is currently the Television Studio Pro 4K. Info on that. The mixing console's from Axia. It's called the Core 16. It is one it's getting a little longer in the tooth as well, but it just works so well. It's so well supported. Fantastic mixer, and we're just continuing to run it. And there's other things in here, like the monitors I'm using, the speakers, the converters, and other stuff. I've tried to document almost everything in here, including the often asks keyboard and mouse is listed on here. And the streaming server I'm using is the Blackmagic Design Web Presenter 4K. When you saw the thing that's over here, that screen on the far left that shows the bandwidth and the percentage of caching that's currently there, along with what you currently see on that screen, that is the output from the Blackmagic Design Web Presenter 4K. So for those of you that wanted a little tour of the studio, that was a very quick tour of the studio, but that's what we're running there. If you want to know more about it, professormesser.com/studio. It's another thing that we have there that might give you more insight into what we're doing. You're wondering, what keyboard is that? What mouse is he? What's ridiculously sized mouse is he using? Well, that is the ridiculously sized mouse that I'm using. In fact, I'm looking to upgrade from this ridiculously sized mouse. It's kind of hard to see in this view. This is my mouse. It's huge, but it's also wired. See the wire coming off of it? They have a brand new one. You fit your whole hand on it. Your whole hand sits on it. They literally call it a hand shoe mouse. It's made by Hippus. And they have a new version of this one that is ambidextrous, and it is also Bluetooth, which should be great for this. So it is a little baby manta ray, isn't it? Just swimming along. It's been a great mouse. It's awful for gaming. Worst mouse ever for gaming. If it's something you're having to move fast, it's a big mouse. It takes a while. There's a lot of real estate to move around the desk. So if speed is of the essence, this is not the mouse for you. But if you sit at your desk for way too many hours in a day and you're using this mouse constantly and you have this I have a hand, I can hit the whole octave on a piano. You know, it's big. I can palm a basketball. Those little tiny mice, at the end of the day, I'm walking around like this, like, oh, my hand, the mouse, that's not good. This is I never have a problem. So relaxing to use that. So that's why that's the mouse that we have there. So hopefully that's a little behind the scenes, a little inside baseball there for you. Let's keep going through the list and see what there's so many good questions here. I'm running out of time. I know we're at the top of the hour. So I want to get in a couple of good questions to help you with your studies here that we can kind of end this on. This is a pretty good one. We've been talking this whole time about 601 and 701, and these questions come up, and these are such good questions. It's from Anonymous, who says, I've been studying for the 601 when I can due to my 2 toddlers. I got 3 kids, so I feel you. Mine are big now, so they can dress themselves. They can go to do things by themselves. They can drive them wherever they need themselves, where they need to be now. But when they were little, same issue. You know, we've been doing this for 15 years or so. So it can be a challenge when there are little ones in the house. Question from Anonymous says, the 701 seems easier. Should I focus on the 701 if I don't feel confident about the 601? And this is more of a personal question. You have to make this decision with your personal time that's available and what you're trying to do. But you have 2 challenges in front of you right now regarding that. The first challenge is that there's not much time left. And when you got 2 kids and they're toddlers, I mean, you're having to, get them to bed and spend that hour that you have of awake time, of adult awake time to, pet your significant other and say, hi, how was your day? How's it going? I got to read this book. And then you're back to your studies. It's a challenge. It's a struggle to get enough time to study. And you may be running out of time, and you're probably seeing that. And that's probably what a little bit of that question is about, because we're coming up on July 31st very quickly. We got to get through July 4th here in the United States. And there's a whole week of your time that's gone. Maybe you have to travel. I'm not going to be able to get any studying done. And there's a recital later, and we got to get ready back to school as soon. And then we got to go on family vacation because it's the summer. This is what happens. Life happens. So the question, and sort of wrapped into that question, is, hey, the 701 kind of looked easier than the 601. Maybe because they threw out so much content. They got rid of a lot of the rote memorization. They got rid of all of the command line stuff. They got rid of this, and they got rid of that, and they got rid of the other. And 701 is newer. It's prettier. It has, because it's newer, it's shinier, and you may be kind of leaning towards it as if it is better in some ways. And I would not say that 601 and 701, that one is better or worse than the other. I think from a difficulty perspective, I think the 2 exams are pretty much similar in their difficulty level when you're sitting in the exam room. The problem is when you get to the exam room. It's everything that has to happen before you walk into the exam room. So the exam, the 601 exam, there's a lot more to study. And because the 601 exam retires on July 31st, it goes away completely on the 31st of July, which means you cannot take the 601 exam after the 31st of July. It ceases to exist. It becomes an X exam. So the 601, you could study and study and study, but if you're not ready by the 31st of July, you've now wasted all that time. Well, sort of a waste. This little green area is the part you didn't waste. So of all of the things you studied, this tiny little piece here is the part that you get to take with you over to the 701. You're effectively starting over on the 701. But on the 701, it's smaller. There are fewer objectives to learn. So you may find with 36% of the exam being a fewer number of objectives, there's less to study. There's less rote memorization. There are less things that you have to get into your brain to be ready. And the 701 doesn't retire for another 3 years. For those of us that have played, I had 3 kids. So we went from man-to-man to zone coverage. So for those of you who either doing man-to-man coverage, zone coverage, doesn't matter, having less to study has a big appeal to it. And having challenges in how much time you have available, that can be a significant decision that you would want to make. Now, the other part of this, though, is that you have to get all new study materials. You can't use your 601 study materials to study for the 701. 601 is a completely different exam than the 701 happens to be. 701 only has half of the exam is the same material that you would find in your 601 book. That doesn't help you. So you would have to purchase a new book. Now, we already have our free video course out there. And if you have purchased course notes or practice exams from us, there's an upgrade path that you can pay less to buy the newer version. So there is a path to get you there that's also a little bit discounted on our website. You log into your member login. There's an upgrade link next to the courses that are upgradable. So there's some benefit there, but there is a cost outlay associated with that. So you will need newer study materials. That may or may not be a significant issue. Most books are, less than $50, and the videos are free on the website. Okay, well, maybe that's what you use instead. So that's a decision you will have to make. You know what your schedule is like. Moving from one version of an exam to another is significant, but you aren't starting over. There is a bit of overlap. And a lot of the topics with security have the same philosophy about them. So it's a very similar tone in what you are studying. So there's some benefits that make it a little easier if you want to transition over. This may just be a calendar issue for you. It may just be a physics problem. Like, I only have so much time during the day. We're coming up on the retirement date. Why don't we just make the jump now so that we're not wasting our time with the 601 materials? That's a perfectly reasonable approach. But if you're very close to the end of your 601 studies, you're almost there, you may be able to get some extra time in before the 31st, get it in there, spend the money on that voucher, and take the exam. And maybe you can get it done before the time runs out. That's up to you. You know how comfortable you are with the content. You know how much time you have available in the day. And you can look at your schedule and see what's coming up in the next month and 10 days that would allow me or not allow me to reasonably take this exam. And you can make your decision there. Either way, it's going to be a decision that you have put everything out there. You've looked at all the variables and you're making the best decision on what you think is the right thing going forward. Really, only you are the best person to make that decision. So that's what I would recommend that you do if you are in that position. I think there's good reasons to move to 701 and there's bad reasons to move to 701. Figure out which ones make the best sense for you. I think I mentioned earlier, if I was starting right now, 701's obvious. It's those of us that have been studying for a while. We have to make those hard decisions. Other questions. Let's go through at least one more before my throat goes out. This next one, let's see what's here. Okay. I think this is a pretty good one because this has come up a couple of times. This talks about taking the exam, since we've been talking about the exams. From Alex, who asks, if my country does not have locations to take the Security Plus in person, is there anything I should know about taking the cert at home? Well, taking the certification exam at home can be a very useful thing, especially if the exam center is far away from where you live, or in your particular case, Alex, there's nowhere to go inside of your country to take this exam, which is an interesting thing. If there's no way to take the exam in your country, why are you taking this exam? Because I'm just assuming from this that maybe the certification itself is not as popular in your country as it probably would be if you had exam centers in your country. Or maybe that's not the case. Maybe it is a popular cert and I don't live in your country, so I don't know. That's certainly possible too. In any case, taking the exam in your home functionally is identical to taking the exam at a testing center. What you see on the screen at home is the same thing that you would see on the screen at a testing center. That's about where the similarities end right there, because obviously you're not at a testing center, but CompTIA and Pearson VUE, Pearson is the company that manages the testing process for CompTIA. Pearson and CompTIA have a certain set of requirements that you must rely on, you must follow to make sure that the testing environment is as secure as possible, or so that CompTIA and Pearson VUE feel that your testing environment is as secure as possible. So for example, in my scenario, let's look at this. This won't work to take my exam because one of the rules for taking your exam at home is there can only be one screen on. So this won't work for taking a test. I would have to either turn all those screens off, move them out of the way, take pictures of all that, and confirm that only one screen is turned on. Another thing is that you can't have certain things on the desk. There can't be any loud noises. You can't have your hand in front of your mouth. You can't mouth along. My country does not have locations. Take the Security Plus in person. Is there anything? You can't do that. They will pop up on your screen and send you a message saying, stop talking. You can't say things. You can't talk along with the questions because there might be a recording device in your home recording you saying the questions. So it's not the same as being in a testing center. There's additional security controls they set up to make sure that the environment that you're in at home is as secure as an actual testing center. All of those rules are on the CompTIA and Pearson VUE site. So they tell you what all the rules are before you go in there. I would also highly recommend you read through people's experiences with the online testing. The CompTIA subreddit is a great place to go for stories. So people talk all the time about, I took my exam at home. This is my experience. This is what went right. This is what went wrong. And this is what I was not prepared for. And by reading that, I want you to be prepared for those. So that if you're in the middle of the exam and you put your hand to your mouth and suddenly you see a thing pop up and they go, take your hand away from your mouth, you can think to yourself, oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to do that. And you would continue on with your exam. It doesn't jog you out of the testing environment. It doesn't suddenly cause your blood pressure to go up and you're worried now about the exam. And oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to do that. Sorry. Yeah, we're good. Let's keep going. So as long as you know what to expect, taking your exam at home is a fine thing. And in fact, in an environment where you don't have a testing center that's anywhere near you, you don't have a testing center in your country, or you just don't want to go out to a testing center and you'd rather take the exam in your pajamas, take your exam at home. Certainly something to consider. There's just more that you have to worry about. If I was going to take my exam right now, I would take it at a testing center because I have a number of testing centers that are local in my particular local city, my area. So I can do that relatively easily and I don't have to worry about setting something up at home. And if something goes wrong, it's on them. It's not on me. But if I was not feeling well, if it was bad weather, it's the middle of winter. I'm in Florida, so middle of winter doesn't matter to me, but it might matter to where you happen to be. It's snowy. It's dangerous to travel. Okay, I'll take the exam at home. It makes perfect sense. And I think that's perfectly reasonable for you to do. And a lot of people take their test at home and it's not a problem at all. They have good experience with what they do. They've taken multiple exams and never run into an issue. I think they've done a pretty good job at getting all of the problems out of the process. There's still a few more things they need to work on, but there always is, isn't there? And I think that taking an exam at home is a very comfortable way to work. And if you're taking a certification exam, I want you to be comfortable. And so another thing to consider if you're doing that. Hopefully that can give you some perspective as to what might be good or bad, but you can absolutely take that exam at home. And it's a great way to do it. Other questions. So here's, I guess along those same lines, this is a pretty good question from HG who says, here's your thing there. Do you happen to know if there's a difference in the exams of CompTIA taken in Europe versus USA? Well, other than they talk funny, other than that, I believe the exams are pretty much the same, right? I don't think there's any functional difference in the material presented on the exam. The exam objectives around the world are identical to each other. So the type of questions, the testing environment, the way the questions are presented, the content itself is all identical as far as I'm aware. I don't think much of anything is changed in other parts of the world. Obviously, there are localizations and languages that are changed if the exam is in a different language than English, but the content in that language is identical to the content that you would get in another language. So I don't think there's any difference in the exams themselves, regardless of where you happen to be. So maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but I think that's how it is. I think it's identical. So no matter where you are in the world, when you take the exam, same exam in one country as it is in another country. Other questions. We've talked a lot about 601 and 701, so there's a couple of questions that came in about that. I think we've covered those topics. We've talked about renewals, so we've covered that one too. Let's see what others that are on this list that would be good. I think there are a couple here that I'll focus on. And I think if you are studying for your Security Plus, this is a pretty common question that you would run into. How long do I need to study for this exam? How long do I need to study for the Security Plus? Thank you, chat room, for figuring out, hey, they talk funny in the EU was me talking funny in the United States. Thank you for hooking that one in. How long do you need to study for Security Plus? And I can talk like that because all my kin talk like this. Because everybody I know where I'm from, we all talk like this because that's just normal. I don't know why I don't talk like that now, but I don't. And we're going with that. How long do I need to study for Security Plus? It differs depending on your background and your study process. And I think if we talk averages, the average for Security Plus is probably 2 to 3 months on average to learn everything you need to know to take the exam. The average, those can vary widely. I think it's a very big distribution across that average. I think that there are some people that have a lot of experience in security. Maybe they've taken college courses on cybersecurity. Maybe they've worked in a job where they've had a role that was associated with security. They can walk into these, they can go grab the objectives, study them for a week, and go take the exam. And I see this all the time on places like Reddit where people will say, I had no experience and walked into the exam and passed it in 2 weeks. And you start reading it and they say, well, I was working for a security provider, and that's not no experience. You sort of misunderstood the point of no experience when you were writing that down. You should look at that definition again. The zero experience part is sort of where we talk on average 2 to 3 months. But if you've already worked in a job that had some security, you might be able to grab the objectives, read it in a week, go take the exam and pass it. There are people I know that have done that. So perfectly reasonable to do that in a week. Is that normal? It is not. Very abnormal, very unusual. I would think that many folks are spending their 2 to 3 months really learning the content, really understanding the exam objectives, and going in to take the exam. Now, if you sped up the amount of time you had to study, maybe you spent all of your 12 hours of awake time during the day, you are reading Security Plus books, you're watching Security Plus videos, you're doing Security Plus labs, you do that for 3 weeks, you could probably go in and take the exam and you're done. If it's something that comes easily to you. But we all don't learn in the same speed. Some of us need to read things many, many times before it starts to sink in. Some of us do better watching videos than we do reading a book. Some of us do better reading a book than we do watching videos. Some of us need to type on a keyboard, or they need to write notes in a notebook to better grasp some of those topics. So I think that's one of those that is it's more normal to see people taking months of their time to study for Security Plus. I take these reports of people that say, I had no experience and passed in a week. I had no experience and passed in 2 weeks, as either completely untrue, or they're leaving out a pretty important set of characteristics about what they did. They never tell you they spent 15 hours a day studying, which most of us can't do. They never tell us, oh, I spent a year working for a security provider. Most of us haven't done that. So that's one of those where, yeah, you could pass it in a week or 2 weeks if you already knew the content. But if I already knew the content, I wouldn't be asking the question. So that's the situation I think most of us find ourselves in. Allocate 2 to 3 months. If you're like me, it takes me 6 months on a course like this, because I really like to read it and I really like to understand it. Some people only want the highest level of information, or what they need to get to the exam. Now that's how I build my courses. I build them with just the right amount of content you need to pass this exam. I don't give you too much. We don't dive into things too deeply if I know the exam is not going to ask that of you. On the same way, I want to be sure I give you just enough so that you do have the content you need to pass this exam. And it's a balancing act. It's a very difficult balancing act to give you just the right amount of content. Hopefully we do pretty good with that. We do a good job with those, because I think that's an important part of your studies. But always, you should always be thinking, well, that's interesting. I want to learn more about that. And drilling down into some of these other topics can be very, very interesting, very time consuming, and ultimately may not be necessary for you to pass this and get your certification, but it could still be interesting as part of the learning process itself. And I would highly, highly recommend that if this is a certain topic you find very interesting, drill down into that topic, learn more about that topic, but don't go too far out of the scope of the exam objectives. Again, stick to the objectives. The objectives not only tell you a bulleted list of things that you need to know for the exam, but it does give you some hints about how deep you should be going. Let's look at an example. So I'm going to go back to the objectives. Let's see if I can bring this up and really look at a set of objectives that we have here. So here we'll do section 1.2 of the 701 objectives. Starts with summarize fundamental security concepts. So already you should be thinking summarize fundamental security concepts. So the first one they give you, the first bullet, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, CIA. Now I have an entire video on the CIA. It's not a long video, but CIA that's three things. That's three things I have to know. That's 3 bullets. CIA, of course, is a term that we use in the industry to describe the relationship between those 3 topics: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You hear me say those terms all the time throughout the Security Plus course, so it makes sense that it's here at the beginning. And I give you the overview of what each one of those is, and I give you the relationship between them, because that's an important foundation, and we use that in the industry as a way to describe those 3 topics. But we don't go deep into CIA and the history of CIA and how we haven't always called it CIA, and who came up with this CIA design, and why do we... There's no reason to go into that level of detail. We don't have to know the whole history of where this came from, how it manifested itself in our industry, why it's on the exam. It's not the question. The question was, I need to summarize this fundamental security concept. I give you a summary of it. And I give you just enough of the summary in the video that you can answer the questions that would be posed to you on the exam regarding confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Next bullet, non-repudiation. we need to summarize what is non-repudiation. And in fact, that's not a video. It's probably a slide or two in the videos where we describe it. We talk about it. I give you an example of how I use non-repudiation, or the methods that we can add on top of the security that we're using to provide us with non-repudiation. And that's a pretty good summary. That should be able to give you everything you need to be able to answer questions presented to you on the exam that deal with non-repudiation. Next bullet, authentication, authorization, and accounting. There's entire books written on this. There's obviously not entire books we're going to talk about in the videos, thankfully, but it does talk about authenticating people, authenticating systems, and authorization models. They're in the video. And we go into the proper level of summarization for those specific topics. So when I talk about the exam objectives give you a little bit of a feel for how much you need to know, it's because they tell you these keys summarized. Let's take another section. Let's go to another one. Explain the importance of change management process and the impact to security. And they talk about business processes impacting security operation, the approval process, ownership, stakeholders, impact analysis. All right, this is more than a summary. We need to understand why this is important, how it fits into the change management process, and how it impacts security. So there's 3 additional things we need to know about every single one of these bullets: approval, ownership, stakeholders, impact, test, back out, maintenance, standard operating procedure. So we're going into a little bit more detail with that. I think that entire column there is one video. So there's a good example of, we're going to spend a little more time talking about this one because we need to understand the importance of these, how they affect the change management process, and what is their impact to security. And we need to answer questions about those as they relate to business processes. Same thing with technical implications, same thing with documentation, same thing with version control. Here's another place where you get into how much of this do I need to know? People have said, my Security Plus instructor gave me a sheet that listed out all of these different hashing and encryption algorithms and described the key links that are used in all of these. How much of this do I need to know? Okay, well, let's go to the exam objectives. Where is, they gave you SHA-256. All right, well, let's look at the exam objectives. SHA-256. I don't see SHA. It's not on. I don't have SHA-250. It's not in here. So one of the big differences in when moving from 501 to 601, and again, 601 to 701, is a lot of the minutia and the details about these very specifically named hashing algorithms and very specifically named encryption methods and the key links that are used in them, and all of those details have been over the years removed from the exam objectives. But I think a lot of people still go back to those days of 6 and 9 years ago where some of this was in the exam objectives. Still not to that level. I'm not sure how they ever got to memorizing key lengths. That's never been part of the objectives. And who cares, quite honestly. The key is understanding why those hashing algorithms are important. Why that what type of encryption algorithm is used in that wireless network. But you don't have to know details about how that particular encryption is implemented. I don't have to know key sizes. I don't have to know the algorithm itself. I don't have to understand the cryptographic technology behind the way that it works. I just have to know what it does. Does it provide me with integrity? Does it provide me with confidentiality? Is it a hashing? Is it encryption? Is it a digital signature? What is it? That's what I need to know because I'm the security administrator. I'm not the security programmer who's writing the program to use this. I'm the one using the program. So I don't have to know how the engine of the car is made, but I do have to know how to drive the car. That's the difference. And so have a look at the objectives and make sure you understand what point they're talking about driving and at what point you may be digging into too much of the engine. If you find yourself in the front of the car under the hood way too much, you're going way too deep. So use the exam objectives. They will give you the flow you need to use. They will give you the scope of what you need to know, even if they're not spelling it out. And I will tell you, if they are spelling something out, you better know that. There are places in these exam objectives where they start to give you a little bit more detail. I'm trying to find some examples of this. In the 701, there's not a lot, quite honestly. But there are places where, for example, under data disposal and decommissioning, instead of just saying, how do you get rid of data? And you have a very broad understanding or summarization of data, they actually go into what is sanitization, what is destruction, what is certification, and what is data retention. So they do drill into some of these topics, but they give you the scope of what they expect you to drill into and then stop right there. So that's another place. These objectives telling you more about what's going on than you may realize. You just have to make sure you read through everything on there to truly understand how deep should I be going with this. Some books go super deep. If you look at some of the books out there for Security Plus, they're giving you a lot of unnecessary information for this exam. In fact, some of this information is just unnecessary in general for what we do as security professionals. But I think, of course, some people will give this excuse of, well, knowing more is better than knowing less, right? Not for a certification exam. I need to know exactly what I need to know. I'm wasting time and I'm wasting effort and I'm wasting my brain cells if I'm learning more than I need to know for this exam. For example, find me one port number listed in this exam objectives. There's none. There's 0 port numbers in here. Why are you spending your time memorizing 100 port numbers when 0 port numbers are listed in the exam objectives? That's what I mean about spending your time in the right way. Find the things that are important for you to get this exam certification in your pocket for you to pass this test. After you pass the test, if you want to go learn about all those port numbers, go do that. If you want to go understand the details and intricacies of the hashing algorithms and the key sizes of the encryption that's used and all of those other pieces and digital signatures, there is a world of cryptography available to you to pull that out of. But for your purposes of the 701 and the 601 and any of the certification exams you're taking, stick to the objectives, be as efficient and focused as you can, and it will save you time, it will save you effort, hopefully save you money because you won't have to take the exam again. And I think that is the most important part of this, is focusing on what is important to pass this exam. It's going to be an important part for you as you plan your studies, you plan your strategy, and you work towards earning that certification, getting in your pocket, and going on to the next thing. Because earning the certification is part of the process that's part of a bigger goal, a bigger set of strategies that's moving you towards something. Whether that's your next job, whether it's your first job in the industry, whether it's getting a better job with a better company, giving you more flexibility, giving you more of a salary, giving you more control of your life, whatever that is. That's what we're trying to do here. And if we can find a way to make that process more efficient, to cost you less money, and to get you to that finish line and get you on to what the next goal in that set of strategies is for you, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think carefully reading through the exam objectives is going to give you that insight and that focus you will need to learn exactly what you need to be able to earn the cert and then move forward with that overall strategy. Hopefully that's giving you some ideas, some thoughts, some things you can do to help study for your exam. And I hope you work towards that and hope the very best with your studies on all of those. I think that's a good place to finish up with today's study group. Thank you so much for joining us in our first hour for the Q&A. We, of course, have new Q&A every month, so come back in July. We will have brand new questions for you. And, of course, we've got a lot going on with certification exams. We have one more study group before the 601 exam is retired. And although we are no longer doing 601 specific study groups, we have an entire 3 years of study groups that you can go back and look at for the 601 that is all focused on specific SY0-601 exam objectives. They might be a useful study tool if you're working towards that 601 exam. In the meantime, we will keep creating the 701 content for you. We will always have these live streams available. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your questions in the second hour. If you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, we certainly hope that you would consider doing that. And of course, we will be on our Discord immediately after this. So you can meet up with folks there and study for your 601 or 701 exam. There's study groups going on there that are simply held by other people that are on the Discord. Happens all day, every day, it seems. Always somebody popping open another channel, starting a channel up themselves and going through those studies. It might be a good place for you to study as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.